Oh, baby. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Nintendo Prime Podcast, episode 22. We're back at it again. We have kind of a big week because there's a certain product behind me that launches this week. I don't know if you guys are aware of that or aware that that's no longer a functioning product. Beyond all of that, we also have Metroid Dread coming out. That's a huge deal, especially for all Metroid fans out there that have been waiting almost 20 plus years to have the conclusion of the original Metroid story. So there's all that happening, obviously, this week. And I don't know, was there a Smash event this week? I feel like
possibly.
I feel like a little something might have happened that I don't know how many people truly expected. They might have hoped and dreamed. And there's been rumors for. But it is what it is. Anyways, I am your host, as always, Nathaniel Rumful Jantz. And to my left and your guys' right is Mr. Eric Muller. How's it going, man?
Hello, everybody.
And then, obviously, right above our little heads floating up here is the one, the only Andres Restart. How's it going,
Hi.
man?
I'm good. Ready to probably talk more than we expect to.
Well, we'll see. I'm going to try hard to keep us to a little bit of a limit. We'll see what happens. We kind of go as the flow goes on this podcast. You know how it is. Hi, everyone in the chat. How you guys doing? You guys having a good day? I hope so. So let's just jump right into, I guess, obviously the coup de grace news of the week that just happened. We're obviously talking about Smash Bros. The final character was announced. It is Sora. This isn't a spoiler for anybody. This is public knowledge. It's everywhere. Sora from Kingdom Hearts. And there was an additional announcement of all the Kingdom Hearts games coming to Switch, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. First, let's focus on the Smash side of things. So first off, a good choice. You guys like it?
I think it was the best choice. The only other choice that might have been better or comparable would be Master Chief. Like those are like the two those are the two characters that I think were conceivable that they could have somehow pulled off and barely would have been able to do it, that would have actually satisfied the general audience in terms of like a final climactic character. Everything else either would have been impossible or not really satisfactory as a final climactic character. And I didn't expect it. I was prepared to not get like that big, awesome final character. I was expecting something more middle ground. But, you know, we kind of always talked about Sora as a possibility. The one sort of hesitating factor is that Disney is even worse than Nintendo in terms of like working with them and allowing people to use their franchises. Yet it happened,
EA do it.
and it made me cry a little. And I'm not even a Kingdom Hearts fan, so I think it was pretty special.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like when they unveiled them, first off, I'm like, no way. Like, we're going to find out, like, this is just, like, a skin or some sort of weird thing, and the real character, it's going to be one of those fake-out moments. But, I mean, it's hard to fake out when you have literally Mickey Mouse symbol pop up on the screen. It's kind of like, like, literally is impossible to happen as a joke unless Disney's cool with it. Mm-hmm. So the fact that Disney's cool with it was like, no, this has to be real. We are getting Sora. And it was a really cool moment, obviously, at the end of the official trailer when, like, Mario and Sora shake hands. It's kind of like a recognition of, obviously, the closure of adding content to Smash Bros., as well as recognizing a character that, while many people wanted Sora to be in Smash, whether you enjoy Kingdom Hearts or not, it was one of those, people didn't think it was going to be possible, because there's a lot of companies involved that have to agree to things, and Sakurai made that actually very well known during the event. Shockingly, he brought up how difficult it was just to go through the process of adding this character and getting all the approvals and all the companies on board. And that he's even partially surprised that it actually came to fruition.
Yeah. I mean, it's evident simply by the
cool
presentation, right?
Yeah.
Like, you look at what we got. Sure, I think everything they put in there was very well put together, but also the only, like, straight-up Disney character that's outside of Kingdom Hearts is it was just the keychain. Everything else is, like, straight from Kingdom Hearts. Like, we saw no other Disney characters there, right? Like, I thought maybe when we might see like Mickey and Daffy, because they're supposed to be like his partners in crime, right? Like, I'm not a big Kingdom Hearts fan, but I know that usually they're like alongside him in the party, and they were not at all. So, and they're not even in like those background little circular things on the stage either, which usually have them apparently. So it's evident that there were concessions needed to be made for this to even be possible. So they needed to limit the amount of Disney fanfare, even though this is a Disney-owned character. But they made it work, and I even as an outsider looking in, I feel like they did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to consider when looking at this because not only how hard it was, obviously, for all the parties to come together, but like you mentioned, there was obviously concessions. I mean,
Hold on. I'm sorry. I said Daffy, Donald, whatever.
Donald, yeah.
Looney Tunes, Disney, my bad.
Yeah.
The duck one.
The duck, one of the ducks. Not the Mighty Ducks. So, I think Disney owns the Mighty Ducks too. Anyways, I'm pretty sure it's a Disney-owned property. Anyway, so I actually thought it was quite interesting that they added this character and it came through. Obviously, with the concession being that no OG Disney properties would necessarily be present beyond the Mickey Mouse chain on the key, which it has to be there because that's from the game. If you have to alter that, it's going to not really feel like it's really Sora at that point. It's going to feel like it's a knockoff character. Even though the rest of the character might be fine, it's a very key part of the main weapon in the game. So you can't just not have that be there. And that, to me, was obviously the biggest, like, Disney being like, yeah, okay, you can put the Mickey Mouse symbol in. And they're very protective of that symbol. So the fact that they let that, but then didn't let the other characters in is a bit of a disappointment. I am assuming, at least for ideas that they had potentially for the final Smash, probably would have included some of those characters bare minimum. But obviously they had to find a way to do it without, and they found a way that was actually kind of a reference back to the first Kingdom Hearts game. So it ended up the final Smash is fine; it works out fine.
Yeah, but for a moment, I did think that maybe because during the presentation, Sakurai said, "Oh, I'm gonna save this final Smash for later, so you guys can have a surprise." And I thought he meant like when the character comes out.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be Disney characters that I'm like, oh, that's why. Like you gotta wait. And people gotta find out on their own. And then he did it, and I was like, oh, that's it. Well, that's not what we.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking they were just gonna keep it out of the stream because it was Disney characters, but no. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was interesting. I do think that what was a telltale sign to me when I first started thinking, because I think he was shown. Well, maybe we were shown this after. Was just when he went through the song list, and none of the songs were original Disney music that got remixed into the game, because there's a lot of original Disney music remixed into the game from all the various IPs. So when I saw that, I was like, okay. Like, yep, they're just sticking with the stuff that is strictly Kingdom Hearts and not related to other things happening outside of Kingdom Hearts. So a little bit disappointed that Disney didn't give him full permissions on everything. And I always wonder, why not? I don't know. I mean, the only thing I could think of is maybe Disney said, absolutely, but we want 80% cut of every sale of this character. And they're probably like, no. Nintendo probably wasn't willing to make a concession like that.
A thought just crossed my mind, right? Like, we're assuming that Disney's the one that made this hard, but what if the reason why there aren't any Disney characters isn't so much that Disney was giving a lot of pushback, which that's my first thought, right? Like, maybe that's probably the best bet as to why we are not seeing the Disney characters. But the other consideration is that maybe because of what Smash is, they didn't feel that putting in the other Disney characters that weren't originally video game characters would be appropriate. Because Smash is supposed to be a celebration of gaming, which is why we've seen in multiple interviews Sakurai suggest that we could never see someone like Iron Man or Goku because they're not originally video game characters. So
it's
maybe
maybe
that's
bring
why.
Over the protagonist from a franchise that's built around Disney characters.
Yeah.
And the Disney characters, especially since they're heavily referencing Kingdom Hearts 1, I mean, there's two particular Disney characters from Kingdom Hearts 1 that are basically there the entire time to like not even have them part of the final Smash or something.
Yeah.
So even if they're just vaguely present in like the victory pose or something like that, right? Like just some sort of hey, but instead all you get is the Mickey Mouse medallion on the
or
key,
some sort of like
it, but
pins on his shirt or something. That would have been interesting.
Yeah. So there's just I don't know. Like Eric, what are your thoughts? Do you even like Kingdom Hearts for starters?
I've honestly never played it.
There we go. Look at that.
It looks like a fun game. It's probably a game that I will definitely be interested
Disney
in
character
up.
RPGs.
Yeah, right. It's definitely a game I'm gonna be interested in picking up for sure. I've just never had the opportunity to play it because I never owned a console that could play it. So
That's not technically
well,
true, but we won't go down
yeah,
that road.
yeah. Whatever. But yeah, no, I'm neither here nor there on it. I think it's a good addition.
Well, here's the thing.
But
So you two are like kind of on the outside looking in. We're like, I'm not really fans of that series, but you guys think it's still a good ad,
Mhm.
you know, despite not necessarily, because I think that's the big thing with any Smash character that gets added is there's always here's a bunch of people excited and then the people disappointed because it wasn't who they wanted. Like some people, oh yeah, Doom Guy came in as a skin during this one, big deal. But people would have rather had Doom Guy as a playable character than a Mii costume.
Mhm.
I thought that was pretty hype actually. Like
it
seeing
was
the Mii
it was
costume,
definitely
I
hype.
thought
I'm
it was
glad
great.
they did it. I was actually hoping that when I saw Doom Guy, I was like, all right, I'll put Master Chief in too. Like just double it up now and be done with
Yeah.
it. But they couldn't
put him as
do
Mii
that.
skin too.
Yeah, that would have been fun
Master
because
Chief's Mii skin.
literally, okay, so they have like Splatoon ones coming for the Mii fighters,
Yeah.
which I always thought was weird since
There's
already
characters
Splatoon
in.
characters in the
Yeah.
whatever. But whatever, they're Nintendo characters, so throw in some skin. But like they took one of the main characters from Splatoon, Splatoon 2 and stuff, and like said, "Hey, you're gonna be a Mii costume as a hat." And I'm like, "All right, we're really reaching if we're just making a hat a costume now for
boy.
the Mii fighters." Like, there's so many other characters. Like as an example, Nintendo. You didn't add them in, so why not like a
Waluigi
swappable skin for, say, the champions from Breath of the Wild or something like that? Something a bit more relevant than just a hat of a non-playable character in a new IP that has playable characters in the game. I don't know. I just saying, like, I'm okay. It could have been a bit more. Like, Doom Guy was clearly the highlight, and maybe that's why.
That
Maybe
would've
they
been-
just wanted people to be like, hey, Doom Guy, that's the reason you get these Mikas, is Doom Guy.
It could have been
Typically,
interesting.
like whenever we get the Mii costume updates, at least for the last few ones, like there's like one significant Mii costume addition,
yeah.
and the others are kind of like just okay. And the Doom Guy one is the significant one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, and see, I think I understand that, but it's also one of those. This is the end. What I actually found interesting about saying that this is the end is I don't know about you guys, but I've watched through the thing about 3 times since it happened. I skipped all the gameplay parts because it's the same stuff over and over again. Just focused on when Sakurai was talking, and yeah, there was some fake laughter thrown in and stuff like Japan always does. But to me, because right after the direct, a lot of hashtag thank you Sakurai stuff started trending like everywhere. And I feel like part of that is because I don't know about you guys. It kind of felt like this was like a finale for Sakurai. Like this is it. Like the way he was phrasing things, the way he was talking about the game, the way he talked about how eventually things need to come to a close. If you work on something long enough, you eventually get a finish line. And I understand he was talking specifically because this one had 3 years of DLC, even though the last one did as well. It was still one of those where it kind of felt like to me Sakurai was almost saying goodbye. Like, goodbye, Smash. It was a good run. I'm ready to move on. Which, by the way, he absolutely should be able to do anything he wants with the rest of his career. He should have been able to do that this whole time. But I obviously think, obviously his friendship with Iwata that kept him going for so long. And then on top of that, he brought up Iwata again during this presentation for the first time ever in Smash Bros. Ultimate's history. He brought up Satoru Iwata again, which kind of gave me that impression that, yeah, he was only doing this last Smash game because Iwata would want him to go out with a bang and actually create the ultimate Smash Bros. Game and get everything in there and make things like Sora, a seemingly impossible character, get into the game. And there's been other impossible ones too. We got Persona in out of nowhere. People thought Ridley can't work. Ridley's too big. Ridley was in the original roster. So
as a longtime Nintendo fan, I feel like they pretty much did it. Like they got us Banjo and Kazooie, they got us Ridley, they got us King K. Rool. Like those were characters that for years we clamored for, and they all got in there. But then to your point, like they added Joker, they added Terry Bogard, they added Hero, they added Sora, a lot of other characters that people sort of dreamed about. They were big sort of third-party characters also got in there as well. It's just kind of like the stuff of dreams, right? Like they did it. That yes, there are other characters that could be added, but like you're the entire, there's so many video game characters. Like there's always going to be more characters that could be added. especially when you're willing to just go third party. So, you have to call it a quit at some point, right? I think this is it. For now.
Yeah.
Um,
My thing is, like, I don't know that he's done overseeing it. I kind of feel like he could potentially on the next one have more of a Miyamoto. I'm just going to be like the producer,
Yes,
but
no.
only see it. I'm not going to literally work on it. I'm not going to work on balancing the characters. I'm just going to sit back and like make sure that you don't butcher this thing. But I'm also not really. It kind of like if you guys want to think, there's been transitions in Nintendo over the years, like when it went from Miyamoto to Eiji Aonomo with Zelda. Like
Right.
Miyamoto was still there, but he wasn't really doing anything from Majora's
and,
Mask.
and now we're seeing that other transition. I forget the name, but there's another person that works with them now that works right under Aonuma that I'm assuming is going to become the next dedicated
You guys can already see the
director.
transition happening now with Zelda as well, where Eiji Aonomo is probably getting ready to, if not leave the
Yeah.
franchise and work on something else. He's not close to retirement age. But he's talked how he's got other ideas for games as well. So he might be one of these people that leads a new IP team or something eventually, but might still stay on as producer of Zelda for a while. And by the way, I don't know that he's going to leave until after the Breath of the Wild craze is over, because Zelda's more popular than it's ever been. So it's not a great time to transition, but also it kind of is. Breath of the Wild, for those who don't know, Eiji Aonomo gets a lot of credit, and he probably deserves some. But the director of that game is quietly the person who really should be getting the credit and is likely the future leader of the whole Zelda team. So you just got to kind of see how things are going. It's kind of Eiji Aonomo's right-hand man. If you guys pay attention to the last few Zelda games, you'll see that there's been kind of sort of a grooming going on that isn't being talked about yet because he hasn't been introduced as a face of Zelda yet. And I think you will know this when a Zelda game gets announced that Eiji Aonomo's there. Same thing that happened with Miyamoto, but then they introduce the director of the game, and once the director of the game gets to get in front of the public, that's when it will happen. Now, maybe. I'm assuming this was Zelda because Zelda's always had more of a transparent leader of the Zelda team is announcing the Zelda game. Whereas, like Mario is an example. The person who runs Mario is like never in video anywhere. He doesn't do anything. The person that leads the Mario team, you never see him. They just say, Miyamoto, you announce Mario, or hey, you announce this, but I'm not even part. Doesn't matter. You announce it because you're a bigger advertising thing. So it could be one of those things where Eiji Aonomo always announces Zelda games moving forward. But I have a feeling you're going to slowly see transitions into him bringing the director in to be like, hey, this is the guy you should be interviewing. This is the guy who, is on the ground level. I'm just kind of in the background,
Just for the record, the other person I was referring to is Hidemaru Fujibayashi.
Yep.
So, like, we've seen him come up a few times.
Yeah, he's been in a number of interviews.
Yeah. So it could potentially be him. Now, obviously, Aonuma still has a heavy role with Zelda, but, conceivably, Fujibayashi could be the next, like, lead guy for the Zelda team if Aonuma ever steps down.
Yep.
Which it seems like they're heading in that direction. Now, for Sakurai doesn't even work for Nintendo, right? Nope. He's contracted by Nintendo. He used to work for Nintendo. That's why he's a creator of Kirby, but Kirby's owned by Nintendo. That's how, if I'm not mistaken.
That's where Sakurai came from, was HAL.
Yeah, so like now whenever you see Kirby games, they're not actually done by Sakurai. But Sakurai is like the father of Kirby, though, so it's kind of funny how that works. So it's going to be different, but I'm not even sure we'll see a transitional phase. Because obviously this transition is going on for years between Aonuma and Fujibayashi, assuming Fujibayashi is going to be the guy, right? It might be someone else. But with Sakurai,
maybe he just wants to just always be a
maybe he likes being the number two,
Well, there is something to say, though. Like, not just liking being the number two, it's also, hey, as the number two, you get a lot more say on the daily about how the games become. Whereas the number one gets the ultimate say and can shoot everything down, and there's obviously appeal to that. Eiji Aonomo is not literally on the ground floor with the developers, making sure everything's going perfectly. That's what the number two guy does. And there's something to say that maybe you just really enjoy doing that. Because you
maybe I'm mistaken even using number two. That's misleading. They have different roles.
Well, yes,
right?
Roles, yeah.
Yeah.
This is, by the way, I'm not undervaluing Eiji Aonomo's contribution to Zelda. He's obviously still vitally important, and talked about in the development of Breath of the Wild that he was working 80-hour weeks at one point, and it was insane because they don't believe in that kind of work structure in Japan. He chose to do it. Nintendo never asked him. He talked in an interview that he volunteered to come in on weekends and do all this crazy crap, which, by the way, Nintendo doesn't let you do that, but for this particular game, just like with Sakurai, Nintendo's not going to say no to the top guys if they say, we're going to work extra. The Sakurai is also a workaholic.
It's going to be very interesting. I'm actually planning on hopefully coming out with a video by tomorrow, just talking about what the next Smash will look like, because we don't know. We don't know what direction it's going to go, because maybe Nintendo asks Sakurai again, they may, but beforehand it was always Iwata who would ask Sakurai, and Sakurai would be like, well, I got to do it for you, bud, right?
Mm.
Now, that's no longer the case because Iwata passed away. So, you know, it's going to be different. And it does seem like this was like maybe Sakurai's greatest work, right? And to your point, you know, he did have like a bit of a conclusive monologue, and we've never really seen him be this vocal before and this connected to us. So it wasn't like for Smash for Wii U and 3DS. It was treated a little differently. Now, you could attribute that to more of the times as opposed to him wanting to have more of an actor role to say goodbye. I do feel like a lot of it simply having to do with the times and the direction they decided to take with Smash Ultimate, because now social media is a much bigger deal and the presents and directs and things. But I am inclined to think that this is the last time Sakurai will be this involved. But either way, I feel like it's a good bet to say that they'll at least get some feedback from him for the next game. But he may just take an advisor role, like not even like. Maybe not even in like throughout the entire process. Maybe just like occasionally. Maybe just in the early stages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be interesting because obviously we have to see whatever Sakurai does next. I know there's been a lot of fans out there like, "Oh, Sakurai, come back and make a Kirby game," or "You made the last Kid Icarus game, come back and do that." And honestly, I think all of us as Nintendo fans need to step back and look at Sakurai and just be honest and say, go do whatever the hell you want. Don't worry about
which
what
is
we
obviously
want you to
F-Zero.
do. You've been doing what we want you to do for 20 plus years. It's time for you to do what you actually want to do. Like, he has talked so many times in his Famitsu columns about all his interest in all these other games. We found out in this thread that he has played and beat every single Kingdom Hearts game. Like,
yeah, he's a gamer.
Like he's legitimately a gamer. He doesn't just own systems to make it into some video presentation that he said is no budget and that's why it's filmed at his house, which I totally believe it's no budget because I know what it's like to not have a budget and have to make videos.
At your house, no.
At your house. So like, I understand that loves gaming, and he's talked about how he enjoys playing games more than making games, but he will continue to make games so long as people find his games to be enjoyable and want him to make it. So people still want him to make games. It's just now what kind of game does he want to make? He doesn't have. By the way, guys, he doesn't have to make it for Nintendo. He literally doesn't work for Nintendo. Right. He's contracted on a per game basis. Now, obviously, I would assume he would. He's close with Nintendo. He would talk to Nintendo.
They have a healthy relationship. Yeah.
So there is a relationship where he's not going to suddenly shun Nintendo and say, screw you, and go make games for PlayStation. And he very well might make a game for PlayStation. But he wouldn't just exclude Nintendo from the initial conversations of whatever his next project's going to be. Because I'm sure, one, Nintendo would have stuff to present to him as an idea and as a new contract. And two, he might have an idea and be like, hey, Nintendo, are you cool if I do this? No, yes, no, cool. If you're not, it's fine. Or maybe he really wants to maybe he wants to make a PC game. Maybe he wants to make, like, everyone looks at these big AAA games that he does, and maybe that isn't even what he wants to make anymore. Maybe he wants to make smaller indie titles. You know, we don't
maybe he makes an indie title or two
lies.
as a break, as an in-between, and then his next big project is back with Nintendo. You know, like, that's a possibility.
And again, all I care, which, by the way, I don't want Sakurai to stop making games for Nintendo, but even if that happens, I can't get mad about it, man. You gave the best part of your youth and development years to Nintendo. I can't, like, you gave us Kirby, obviously you gave us Smash Bros, and it gave us the greatest crossover in gaming history. That is what Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is. 89 different, I mean, he threw all the stats up, all the different games that are represented.
I loved how he did it, like, the final credits.
And it's insane. And now we have Doom in here, which, I mean, just awesome. And as Brian C. with a $2 super chat earlier said, you know, better to see it as a Mii skin than not at all. Absolutely. I'd rather have the Mii skin than not. And by the way, it's a really badass looking Mii skin. Not all the Mii skins always look great.
It's not like, it's one of the enhanced Mii costumes, right? That looks, it's almost like an entire costume.
Now, I get the moveset's going to be the same as all the other cannon shooters, but it doesn't matter. It's just a really cool looking costume that people are probably going to love playing with.
Yeah. I've like mentioned it already a couple of times. I just wanted to like have it as like a clear point. I will love it. Love it. I'm just putting the idea out there into existence. I mentioned it on stream a couple days ago. Sakurai, I know you want to do what you want to do, but I'm hoping what you want to do is to make the next F-Zero. Because I think you do a great job. I like he was able to revitalize Kid Icarus. Like imagine if he were just to take another Nintendo IP that he loves and just go at it from his perspective and let's see what happens. He's very good at making multiplayer games. He's very good at making fast-paced games. I'm pretty darn sure that if he were to take his team, they could absolutely kill it with a new F-Zero. Just saying.
That'd be
Not to
awesome.
mention, there is a bit of a bond with Captain Falcon. Captain Falcon, of all the different characters that have been used for the different Smash trailers, Captain Falcon is one of the more prominently used characters. So I do feel like there's perhaps a bit of a fondness for him. It could also just be an appreciation for who the characters sort of become over time, almost like a meme. But I don't know. Just saying. I feel like of all the things Sora of that Sakurai might like go back and like do, I feel like F-Zero is like not out of the question. That's just my own personal bias / speculation. There's no tangible evidence whatsoever that suggests that.
Yeah,
I like it.
That's definitely some bias since
I like
he's
it.
got literally no history making racing games.
I don't care. I like
He
it.
could do it.
I like the
He likes
idea.
Well, he can do
motorcycles.
anything.
Yeah.
He's as long as he's got
Exactly.
the ideas, he'll
Right.
make it happen.
Well,
But
no,
it's also one of
what
those.
about Kirby?
That really sounds like
Kirby
I really
Air Ride.
want this to happen.
Kirby
kind of
Air
thing.
Ride. Didn't Sakurai do Kirby Air Ride? Yeah. He did Kirby Air Ride, and that's a racing game.
Owned.
He's done a racing game. He's got it. He's done online. He's done
All
racing
right,
games.
you
He's
can
had
have
a whole
your,
bunch of
you can have
characters
your
on screen.
knockoff F-Zero racing game that's not
Hey.
the real F-Zero
Hey.
game.
No, if
That's
Sakurai's
what Kirby
gonna do,
Air Ride
it's gonna
was. It
be
was a
the
knockoff
ultimate
Kirby
F-Zero.
racing game. It's not really a Kirby game.
Yeah, but it's like the best Kirby spin-off ever.
There's some people that might debate with you on that one.
Yeah,
It's a pretty
you
good
may be
game.
right.
Pretty good game.
It's
There was
pretty good.
a comment here I think is interesting. So Semper Compellus mentions, so if you think the suits at the big Nintendo will invest capital in developing new games so they can sell their old titles, you don't know much about the suits. And it's obvious that all of the major studios, this isn't just a Nintendo thing. This is Square, this is EA, Ubisoft, Microsoft, Sony. Everyone leans into their established IP that's going to sell a lot. That's not a shocking thing. But I will say this, that beyond obviously the president of Nintendo of Japan stating that they're going to focus on new IP, which again, we haven't necessarily seen that come to fruition since he made those statements.
Oh, we have.
But
had
here's
a-
things we can, no,
monkey
not
wrench
since
with the-
those statements.
No, with the monkey wrench of COVID though.
Well, again, I'm just saying, since
Yeah.
he made those statements, we
Yeah,
haven't seen
right,
what
right.
happened. But if you don't
Right.
think Nintendo will invest in new IP, then what the hell do you think they've been doing for the last 10 years? Splatoon was a brand new IP on Wii U, a failed system, and now it's one of their largest IPs they have, and we're about to get the third one. They had ARMS in year one. That was a brand new IP. And if you don't think that they'll invest money in new IP in general, then how the hell did we get that
Regalia
one
Lost.
game by Platinum?
Astral Chain.
Astral Chain, yeah. Astral Chain was fully paid for and invested by Nintendo. Nintendo kept Bayonetta alive, which is a relatively newer franchise.
For all intents and purposes,
Granted,
it's
that's not
basically
their
a new
franchise,
IP for
but they
Nintendo.
kept it alive. And
Yeah.
then also,
Look
hello,
at
they
Xenoblade.
funded Daemon X Machina. They funded Golf Story.
Yeah.
They funded Snipper Clips. 1-2 Switch. How many, like, what more can Nintendo do to prove to you that they make new IPs all the damn time? They don't all blow
think
up.
what-
They don't
what
all
people
become the
wanna
next
see-
Splatoon.
They
But-
want to see a new IP that's like a Legend of Zelda or Super
Sure.
Mario or like a Metroid Prime. We haven't gotten like a new IP that's like this big open world adventure
Nintendo doesn't
AAA
have that many
project.
big open world adventure games, to be fair. Like, it's not
No.
like a staple of Nintendo to have those kind of games.
But I think what we're seeing from Nintendo now, because to your point that we just covered, there's reasonable evidence to show that Nintendo is willing to make new stuff. They do it all the time. It's maybe not exactly what we're
The way
looking
you
for,
want.
but they do it. I mean,
Xenoblade
Ring Fit
Chronicles,
Adventure, for example.
That was a new IP.
Yeah, it's relatively new, and they're giving it a big push.
Wait until the UI.
But look at what they're doing now with Metroid and Kirby and what's rumored for Donkey Kong. Kirby obviously has been done a lot, but now they're going at it from a different angle in 3D. That's going to change the franchise's future. Metroid. They are reviving Metroid. We're getting Metroid Dread this year. Now, apparently, we're getting a Metroid Prime remake, remaster. It's been in the work for 2 or 3 years. And then after that, Prime 4. Like, clearly, there's a big plan to bring back Metroid and strong. Like, Metroid's not just going to be a game we get every 5 or 10 years. Nintendo seems to have a plan here. We hope, right?
we hope. If after Metroid Prime 4 comes out, we might not get another one for 5 or 10 years. Let's wait and see how they perform.
We'll see, but I think you'll agree with me that it does seem that the direction Nintendo is taking with this is to kind of make it more of a recurring franchise again. The other day was talking about it on stream.
I think they're taking their best shot right now. And if this best shot doesn't work, then I don't know that you're going to see Metroid again. We need to wait for the shots to work. We need to wait. I think Dread's going to sell well. I think Prime 1 Remake will sell well. I think Prime 4 will sell well. But 88 on Metacritic think isn't reality. Yeah. Reality is Metroid's never really sold well. So let's wait till the sales happen. Then we can start to say, okay, now it's going to be a more regular franchise.
But I think you agree with me that Nintendo's intent is to try and make Metroid a consistent selling franchise so it can become something they can bring back more frequently. Sure. I was talking about it the other day. You look at the early 2000s, even when Metroid wasn't like the biggest seller, there were a lot of Metroid games that came out in that first decade of the 21st century. So let me just kind of list them off right here. Metroid Prime 1, Metroid Prime 2, Metroid Prime 3, Metroid Prime Trilogy, Metroid Fusion, Metroid Prime Hunters, Metroid Prime Hunters, the trial that came out on DS, it was like a different sort of level, Metroid Prime Pinball, Metroid Other M. I might be missing something else, but those 9 all came out within like 8 or 9 years of each other. That's a lot. Oh, Metroid Zero Mission. So, yeah, there's like 10 Metroid games that came out in like a 10-year span almost, slightly less. Nintendo did try and use the Metroid franchise back then. Not as successfully, but they did. And now it's looking like Nintendo wants to do something similar again. We'll see how it pans out, but I think it shows that Nintendo does want to bring back some of their franchises in hopes that they become consistent sellers. That way there's more variety and there's obviously more sales. So they're doing this with Metroid. They're supposedly doing it with Donkey Kong. You look at how they have multiple voice actors for Donkey Kong characters in the Mario movie coming out next holiday. They just announced we knew about it for a while already because of the blueprints and such, but they officially announced the Donkey Kong expansion to Super Nintendo World, why Donkey Kong? Like, why not Animal Crossing, Pokemon, or Zelda, or which are like way bigger? Because they have a plan for Donkey Kong. So it seems like Nintendo also wants to bring back Donkey Kong, maybe similar to the way they're trying to bring back Metroid. So those are the 2 franchises that are dormant or dead franchises that they're resurrecting, right? Who knows what's next? Like, I think what we're seeing right now that Switch is proving to be successful and we're getting close to year 5, is that now Nintendo's gonna they already have like the Zelda, Mario, Pokemon, Animal Crossing, Splatoon. They've already kind of established good selling legs and they know they can rely on those. I think they're going to take this opportunity to bring back other franchises and see if those can also become healthy, consistent sellers. And that may include some new IPs by the time everything's said and done. Bayonetta 3 might also become one of those as well. Like, obviously, Bayonetta has been a known thing, but Bayonetta hasn't been like a 5+ million seller. I'm not saying it'll be that way from Bayonetta 3, but it might at least beat up Bayonetta 2, right? Like, it has an opportunity to gain a much larger audience. So right now, I just feel like in general, we're seeing a situation where Nintendo is taking a lot of their other previous franchises, giving them a new opportunity to establish a much larger audience. And as you brought up earlier, Nate, there is already evidence that Nintendo has tried out some new IPs, and from what they said in interviews, there are more on the way. Games aren't developed overnight. They take time, take a few years, so we may not see some of those until next year or the year after. So there's a plan here. It's not just going to be Mario, Zelda, Animal Crossing, and Splatoon forever. There's more things on the way.
Well, absolutely. I mean, what franchises do you want to see them revive, Eric? I mean, besides Snowboard Kids.
I mean,
we obviously know Snowboard Kids for you.
Yeah.
Sakurai, make Snowboard Kids.
Right, right. No, I don't know. But one thing I will give, I honestly don't. My brain's not functioning enough for that part of it. I have one thought right now, and all
right, get that thought out. What do you got?
I know one thing that is going to be, I think, that looks like it's in favor of Metroid, though. For some reason, I don't know if it's, like, I don't know if I'm wrong on this, but it seems like Switch owners are different from, like, past console owners and their willingness to try new games or games that they haven't played before. Because it seems like any of these kind of games that are coming out that are, quote-unquote new or things like that, they seem to be selling like the best of the franchise, or this
or
or
it's a
that.
brand new
Right.
game like this. Sold
No, yeah.
millions of copies on Switch.
Right. So, that's
Yeah.
hopefully one thing I've kind of noticed. I don't know if I'm right or not, but with Switch owners, they seem to be more willing to try different games than what they've, maybe have done in the past or stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think the Switch audience, there's a general conversation to be had that the Switch audience is very different from past Nintendo systems. Not that all you guys watching and aren't hardcore Nintendo fans have been playing a whole bunch of stuff. Obviously, we run a Nintendo YouTube channel.
We're talking about like the larger part of the audience,
the
mainstream.
larger audience. There's 100 million people who own Switches, and it's Nintendo's second best-selling home console of all time, well on pace to eventually become its second best-selling system of all time. It's got to pass Game Boy next, and then we'll see if it actually catches up to DS and passes it. But
it will.
It's got a chance. We'll see what happens.
I'm already all in on it. I'm already all in.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
And this system might actually help that. We'll see.
Yeah.
But the thing
we haven't
is,
even gotten a price drop yet.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
Right.
I think that the audience just seems to be one that's not like, you remember like when we blew up, right? Okay, that was blowing up with a lot of children, a lot of parents. It was a great family system, and a lot
like
of
2 or
obviously
3
grandparents.
games.
There's a lot of group homes, even to this day, elderly places that are still rocking Wii's because it gets them moving. It actually is a good exercise for people who otherwise wouldn't be moving. And they enjoy it because it's things they know. It's ingrained in their heads forever. Tennis and bowling and all this stuff. So that's cool. And then on top of that, that audience was just different from everything else. That's why everyone said that audience is lightning in a bottle. That was the quote-unquote casual crowd before smartphones existed. And then smartphones came along, and that seems to be more of the thing that everyone uses. But beyond all of that, I look at other Nintendo popular systems. Well, the NES and SNES days, those were popular. Those were usually considered to be a more hardcore gaming audience with a greater variety of content. And then that audience started shrinking and shrinking as people seemed to gravitate to other systems, whether it was from Sega or obviously PlayStation and then Xbox. So the thing is Nintendo's audience on Switch, and this is an old thing they put out like back in 2018. Nintendo mentioned that something like 85% of their audience was over the age of 18. Now, they haven't updated that statistic since then, so we're not sure what the average age of the audience is today. But what I will tell you is even in my small town of Chippewa Falls, when I'm out and about, heck, when I go out to the local bar, I will find people playing Nintendo Switch, which is not something I've ever seen happen outside of back when they used to do like Wii bowling leagues at the bars. And even then, it wasn't people bringing their own in. They were just playing the one that was at the bar and making it into a drinking game because you can make everything into a drinking game.
Especially in the state of Wisconsin.
But that's the thing. Like, I'm starting to see, that a lot of adults are really into this thing. And I think that might be a credit to this platform back there as being one that I think is going to appeal to adults. We'll talk about that in a moment. The Switch OLED, to me, is not a device that kids should own or care about. It's very much designed in a very adult-like way, and we could talk about that in a little bit because I've been spending a week with it now. That doesn't mean that it's the system that people are going to necessarily upgrade to. If you already own a Switch, you're fine. But there's just something to be had that the Switch audience, to me, seems to be a bit on the older side. And when I say older side, I mean adults. And adults are the ones with jobs and disposable income. So they're the ones spending money, and they're the ones wanting a wide variety of experiences. From my experience, I know with my own children, they really latch onto one game, and then that's just what they play for a long ass time before they move on to something
Fortnite, Apex
else.
Legends, Rocket League.
Yeah, Fortnite,
Minecraft.
Among Us,
Yeah.
Roblox, Minecraft.
The games that are usually free or
they get hooked on a Zelda
Yeah.
game. Like my middle child, Aiden, was hooked on a Zelda game, and all he did was play that for a year straight. He didn't play a wide variety of games because kids don't. They get really into one, and they just play it until they don't feel like it anymore.
What's interesting when you're a kid, though, right? It's a lot easier to get to get immersed. It's a lot easier to kind of like buy into your imagination. Like, it was fun playing games as a kid, right? Because like it's almost like you saw more than what was there. Like I remember playing Mario 64 and just spending hours staring at the horizon, just thinking about, man, if I could just break through this invisible wall, I could swim to those islands and it'd be a whole
Right.
other adventure, right? Like a part of me actually believed that could happen
Mhm.
because I was a kid, you know? And so, yeah, kids can find ways to enjoy one particular game for extended periods of time, especially the way some of the games are designed now. Like Minecraft and Fortnite, you could put thousands of hours into
Yeah.
and still
And the way
find
games
more
are now,
enjoyment.
it seems that a lot of adults are more apt to play a game, beat it, move on,
Move on.
or play a multiplayer game
Yeah.
for a month or two, then move on. Which
But it
is
also
different.
depends on
Like
the
when I
kind of
was a
gamer,
kid,
though,
I
right?
feel like I played a wide variety of games as a kid. But then when I think back, like I tried a lot of games because of game rentals, which is a different
Right.
story today.
Yes.
Obviously, you don't necessarily have that option as readily available. Technically exists red boxes, and it's not convenient for children anymore. But my thing is, I think back, it really was only like a handful of games I really spent a majority of my gaming time playing. Um, and that's crazy when I think, oh man, I've played 300 retro games. Yeah, but only really could I tell you about 5 because they're the 5 I put all my time into. All the Zelda game releases, Mario Kart 64, the original Halo, and then Age of Empires and Age of Empires 2 on PC. That's where I spent the majority of my gaming time. Then eventually Madden as I got into my teenage years, but it was really a selection of games as a kid where it's weird when I think about now, like just in the last week, I have played 7 different games. And I never did that as a kid. I didn't switch between 7 different games in a week. So I feel like with the Switch audience potentially being more adults, the last report from Nintendo said it was, but it's out of date. It makes me feel like if it is adults, then that explains why there's such a willingness to try new things, because adults seem to be super willing to try new things. Kids always seem a bit more reluctant. At least from my experience as a parent, my kids are reluctant to try new things. They like to stick with what they know. Whereas adults are always like, hey, we need something new, something exciting, something fresh. We need it now because, hey, we've been doing the same thing for X amount of years of our life. We want to spice up our life, add some variety, And I think during the pandemic, this has obviously been a thing too, because adults have found now they've had more time to game than they're accustomed to because they're working from home or are laid off or whatever the case might be.
Gaming as an
adults aren't
adult has
accustomed
also
to having
become
this much available
more
time to game.
socially acceptable.
Yeah, it's become
Yeah.
The pandemic
True.
has made gaming socially acceptable. It's like not even a joke anymore. It used to be something that if you went out in public playing like a handheld gaming device as an adult, people would look down on you and you would get made fun of. And now when you're out there with a Switch, people just don't even bat an eye. They just cool. Just
People
another person
understand
playing games.
it's just another thing. There's another thing I like to sort of consider as a contributing factor to like the high like ratio of systems and games sold, right? That's what's the install rate. And that's just the way the Switch is structured. Like, yes, they marketed towards young adults and such early on, and that definitely contributed. But you just look at what the Switch is. It is a home console. It is a portable console, and also it's a tabletop console, right? And that style of what it is, that Switch, it enables people to play games in different ways, and that appeals to people with different lifestyles. So basically, it enables people to play the games they want in different places whenever they want. It's more flexible in that way, unlike a PlayStation or an Xbox or a gaming PC. So because of that, people can play the games they want more often. As a result, they'll get through more games. They'll want to buy more games. Because the Switch is a system that has a fluid form factor that changes and adapts to the needs of any particular person. Which is also probably a big selling point, right? Which is why a lot of people who buy it, they see that like, oh, that means I can play Skyrim on the train if I want to. All right, I'm gonna do that, and they'll buy it, right? Like they might love Skyrim on their PlayStation or PC, but when they hear that they can play it on a console, but like on the go, they go for it. And then, oh, I would beat Skyrim. All right, well, what's my next game? I need something else to play on the train because that's how they get to work, right? They're gonna pick another game. That's just how it is. So both of those factors, I think, play a large role into why more people buy games on Switch than other systems.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I think there's just a lot of contributing factors that the Switch audience. I mean, you brought up the Switch audience just feels different.
And the other question would be interesting to update on. I just looked up back in 2018, the average number of game a Switch owner had was 10. So that'd be interesting to see the updated stats on that. The average.
Well, we all know
the number of games average Switch owner has.
When is the next investors meeting update? I don't even. I know there's one more. The final one's in. Let me see, March. So in April. So the next one's got to be.
So yeah, the data that I saw is from March of 2019.
Gosh, I don't even know when the next one is. It's got to be November, December, somewhere in there.
It's usually like about every 3 months, right?
Yeah, it's every 3 months. And I don't remember when the last one was. If the last one was in the summer, then we're due one really soon. But I think we just had one. No, we didn't. Maybe we didn't just have one recently.
But that'd be interesting to see the average
someone in the comments should go look up the dates
that they each.
Let us know when the last time they had an investors meeting.
Switch owners has.
Because when we get that, we'll have an up-to-date number. There is a number as of the last investors meeting. You can look at total games sold and consoles sold, and I think it's under 10 now. But I don't. I obviously we don't have the most up-to-date figures at this moment. So Nintendo, by the way, is the only one who knows the grand total of games sold. It's funny. So I've discovered that apparently some of the publishers aren't even aware of how many of their games sold on a particular platform for several months. It's really weird. I don't understand how those payment structures work, and then they figure it all out. Nintendo obviously knows because they know how many games got shipped, how many cartridges got bought, how many digital copies were sold. All that. The Nintendo has all the data. But anyways, so I guess is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about Metroid Dread? We had a brief little Metroid talk for a little bit there. I mean, it comes out in a couple days. Obviously, I think a bunch of previews or reviews or something dropped today. At least some of the embargo lifted on Metroid Dread today, as well as Switch OLED. And I find interesting just so much that Metroid Dread has leaked, guys. It's been leaked almost a week at this point. It leaked like last Friday. And then what happened earlier this week is, outside of the fact that someone in the media leaked it last Friday, where there was a ROM available online and there was video files everywhere, is that, again, retailers keep breaking street dates. So a bunch of people got their retail copies early. Some of them just sent in the mail from online retail. So a bunch of people are already enjoying Metroid Dread right now. So yeah, there's spoilers and everything's everywhere. I heard, I'm curious on this point. Again, it's not a spoiler because I don't know. I have just heard from somebody who has completed the game. The story's going to apparently be really controversial. I don't know why.
Well, I've seen some reviews and they've said the story's really good.
But we'll see. I have no idea. We'll see. I think the thing is, it's kind of like when you got to Mass Effect 3. And that was supposed to be the closing of a story. And then you made all these choices, but then the original ending was everyone got the same ending. So it felt like your choices didn't matter. And that's what made people mad about Mass Effect 3, was when it only had the one ending. It's like, then what the hell was the point of all the choices we made in the last 3 games? It culminated in the exact same thing no matter what. And I don't know what's going to be controversial about this potential story, but it's one of those, hey, it is the closing out of the original Metroid story. And I think there's just, it's been so long and nobody thought the closeout was ever going to happen anymore, is that maybe people just formulated in their minds what they thought should be the end.
That's possible.
And that this might not line up with their opinion over all these decades about how Metroid should end. By the way, when we say Metroid ending, it's not the end of the franchise, guys. We just got done talking about how they clearly have plans to potentially keep this thing going for a while. This is just the end of this particular story arc in Metroid. Samus is going to move on. There'll probably still be more. If this side scroll,
I don't know, man. What if Samus is dead? We don't know what happens in Metroid.
Maybe, I mean, maybe, and then that's all we have left the Prime games that happen in a different universe. I have no idea. We'll have to wait and see, but I assume if this game sells really well, guys, as a side-scrolling a Metroid game that has had, obviously, a pretty decent budget put in. You guys seen some of the cutscenes and the marketing material? They didn't cheap out on this game. So if this sells really well, I clearly think we're going to get another side-scrolling Metroid game at some point after Prime 4. And they might even start rotating. They might do what Zelda did for a long time, where they rotate from the top down to the giant open games. Okay, well now they get the side-scrolling to the giant Prime-style games. And they might just start rotating. And to me, that would be a beautiful thing as a Metroid fan. to just know every 3 years we might get something major from Metroid.
They may also give us spin-offs as
Yeah.
well, like to
Potential.
tie those over. Like for
I
example,
mean,
we got Age
they
of Calamity
have
for Zelda,
attempted
right?
spin-offs, to be clear.
Multiple times.
They haven't worked out any of the times they've tried it.
Oh, we got
And
Metroid
the
Prime
sad
Hunters.
thing is, the last spin-off was actually really good. It was just very ill-timed, and they probably shouldn't have used the name they used.
Also, just online sucked on 3DS.
Well,
but...
yeah, it wasn't also the best device to do.
Well, it's like, so Federation Force was fun. Like I thought it was a cool game, but the idea was it was like a co-op game, like to play with your friend, right? And I tried doing that, but every time I would play,
it was on the wrong device.
It would just the missions we'd get dropped just because after playing for 10, 15 minutes, you just get dropped from mission, and eventually we just gave up. It's because it would happen consistently.
Kind of what happened with Triforce Heroes too, to be honest. But
yeah, well,
some really good ideas that just aren't really on the systems they should be on.
Yeah,
or you'd have the a-hole that just kept picking you up, throwing you off the edge. That's all they did.
Oh yeah, in Triforce Heroes, yeah, that was.
Also, Metroid Prime Hunters is another option.
That was one of those, just like that Metroid game. It's one of those games that's a lot better than people think it is, but only when it works.
Right.
And
like
unfortunately, the system is tied to, and the online connection that you have on that system can be not great. All right. So, anything else about Metroid Dread outside of, hey guys, keep avoiding spoilers. You don't got to worry about it on my channel. I don't have the game. I'm not looking at the spoiler videos. I'll give final impressions on it at some point next week for those who care. It's not going to be a video I expect to perform very well, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time necessarily editing it like crazy. But you'll get a decent video out and at least get my opinions on the game. But you guys got any final thoughts on Dread before it gets here outside of just hype?
I just hope it does well, just for Metroid fans.
Oh, man,
I mean, it has to do well because we have to make RGT85 play Balan Wonderland on live stream and complete the game like 100%. He made the bet. He made the bet. It only, by the way, it doesn't even have to be like crazy. It only has to sell 3 million copies, like to do it. So,
bro, I think it's gonna sell 5.
That's what I think too. But it only has to hit 3. I just want to see him forced to play Balan Wonderland all the way through. And RGT85, I don't know if you're watching right now. I caught your video, you bastard, where you clipped out me dancing on my live stream on Friday. You bastard. You won't even DM me back, and you're going to put that clip in your video. You. God damn it, RGT. Anyways, all in good fun. All right, so I guess let's talk.
There's some things I want to say about Metroid.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Like I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface.
Go.
No, don't worry, we won't go that deep. We won't go that deep. But I do kind of want to talk a little bit about we're getting reviews, right? Like on Metacritic, it's at an 88, which is really good. That's really good. That puts it in territory of Game of the Year nomination, kind of good. And to think that it hasn't happened yet, we'll see, right? But to think that Metroid Dread, a Metroidvania style game, could potentially be among the Game of the Year contenders at the Game Awards, that's an exciting prospect. And I think that will also probably go in even longer ways towards further marketing the game, helping it to sell even better. If it gets up there, more people are going to want to do it. I mean, every time the Game Awards comes around, you see the games that are nominated. You're like, oh, I haven't heard of that game. Well, I should probably go ahead and play it, right? Like, so I think it's kind of one of those things where like the richer get richer. So if Metroid Dread proves to be that good for enough people, it gets nominated, and then even more people are going to buy into it. And there's even the possibility that Nintendo potentially like teases something else for Metroid at the Game Awards. Maybe it's DLC for Metroid Dread. Maybe it's that Metroid Prime remake we're hearing rumored about or something. Like there is that potential there. So it's just kind of an exciting idea to think that Metroid Dread has reached almost like potentially like a mainstream level of appeal because it's being talked about so much on social media right now. Nintendo's been marketing the crap out of it. People are learning about Metroid now. The reviews are very strong. There's a lot of potential here, and we already talked about it earlier how Nintendo seems to have a plan. But as you noted earlier, Nate, like Metroid Dread needs to sell. If it doesn't sell, then maybe that plan falls flat, right? Like I think what Nintendo wants, they want Metroid Dread to be the game that puts Metroid on the map. But then they want to follow that up with apparently a really well worked on Metroid Prime remaster remake. We'll see what it actually is when they reveal it to us, if they reveal it to us next year. But we get that next year, and then hopefully we get Prime 4 the year after, and you have a sequence of high quality, high selling Metroid games, and then all of a sudden the Metroid franchise is like a mainstream Nintendo franchise. Like that's probably what Nintendo's maybe kind of going for here. And it's an exciting thing because Metroid has never really been that. Metroid's been pretty niche almost. Even the original Metroid Prime just sold 2.5 million on the GameCube. Like that's the peak of the franchise. But now things might change. That's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's always exciting to think that Metroid could become. I don't want to say it hasn't been a staple for Nintendo, but could become a more regular franchise that could consistently maybe hit 5+ million. I'm not even talking about being a mega hit. We're not talking 10+ million Splatoon territory or 30+ million Animal Crossing Mario Kart kind of territory, or now Zelda's apparently a 20+ million seller. We're not even talking about that, the Marios and the Pokemons of the world. We're just talking like if it's a franchise that can consistently sell over 5 million, Nintendo's going to keep making it. We already know this because look what happens with Fire Emblem. So like that's kind of what I'm kind of hoping.
That's just like a consistent 2 million seller.
Yeah. Well, that's because before Fire Emblem Awakening, it was like barely breaking 1 million. So it was kind of like it was a really, and the same, by the way, same thing's true for Kirby, by the way, guys. Kirby's not a really huge seller, but it was just so cheap to make, and they were spitting them out every year that it was clearly money for them. That's why they kept doing it. This 3D Kirby games are going to be interesting to see if this can break through. It has to be a great game first, and we don't know that yet. So
yeah, that's an interesting point, though, right? Because Fire Emblem and Kirby come out frequently, but they're not necessarily high budget projects. Metroid, on the other hand, if you look at the sales, they may not be that far behind Kirby or Fire Emblem, maybe a little bit. But I think the difference is that Metroid, whenever it's done, it's more of a bigger, ambitious sort of project. And when it doesn't yield greater sales, it's just not considered a good business proposition. If you have to put in a AAA effort and it's underperformed by a AA or single A effort, then that's not good business, right? So that may also play a role as to why we haven't seen Metroid as much, is because when Nintendo does Metroid, they know they have to do it well, and if they do it well and it doesn't sell well, that's a problem.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I just looked up. Fire Emblem as a franchise does tend to sell better than Metroid, at least from Awakening and on. Every single game is sold over 3 million, which is just not something we can say for Metroid. Metroid is much closer, based on the charts, to Kirby than it is Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem is obviously there, but ever since Awakening, it's kind of gotten to the tier that we sort of want to see Metroid get to, which is weird. As you said, Metroid seems to always have a higher budget. At least it has since Prime 1, really? I guess Prime 1, Prime 2, Prime 3. Dread looks like they've had actually one of the biggest budgets they've ever had for a side-scrolling version of Metroid. Obviously, we know Prime 4 and the development hell it's been through, and obviously a lot of money's been sunk into that game, maybe so much that it needs to sell well, because in Other M, they talked about how Other M they put a lot of money in, and if it didn't sell well,
voice acting, that costs
you might have to put Metroid on the shelf. And then they kind of sort of did that, but then didn't do that because we still got spin-offs, which didn't make any sense. Why are we getting spin-offs for a franchise that already isn't very popular? Spin-offs should be for ones that are. But then again, Kirby gets a bunch of spin-offs all the dang time. So it's all this big conundrum where it's like Nintendo has been trying to figure out how to get Metroid games to become popular. Because the bottom line is, Metroidvania as a genre is massive. It's no longer niche anymore. There are a number of indie titles that have outsold the totality of sales of the entire Metroid franchise put together. And there's some indie games that with single releases that have outsold it in the same genre. And I think Nintendo looks at it as, how can that happen when it's our genre? We founded this genre. Why are we not at the top? Why is everyone else doing it somehow better than us, more appealing than the actual starting of the genre? And I think this is where we get into, people talk about, is Metroid Dread worth $60 or whatever. Bottom line is, I guarantee there's a bigger budget put in this than any of the other Metroidvanias you can find on the eShop right now. Will it live up to the expectation of such a budget? I have no idea. We'll have to wait and see. It looks like it will. It's reviewing very, very well, but we've also seen indie games review this well too in the same genre. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. Personally,
I think all signs are pointing towards strong sales. Obviously, to your point, we'll have to wait and see. But
well,
and
to be clear, things trending on social media hasn't always translated into huge sales. It's one thing I've been tracking a lot over this generation are views of trailers on Nintendo's YouTube channel. They don't, and it they seem to be a pretty good indicator of what sales are going to be. Like when you go look at like the views of the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer from E3, it's already got more views than most of the Zelda franchises ever sold. Very clearly, that's going to have a massive launch and hit 10 million copies super, super quick. But then you'll see other ones like Metroid as an example, the Metroid Dread, where they've had like the initial trailer got, a whole bunch of views because it was E3, big deal, big announcement. And then all the follow-ups since then have been significantly less. And it's the follow-up trailers you got to see. So right now we have the hype Breath of the Wild trailer at the indicator will be what the next non E3 trailer, if one even exists, who even knows at this point, that we get that we'll really see how well that game does. But I've been watching the trend of trailer views, and it appears to me that Metroid Dread is going to sell very well relative to the views it's getting. But how well is that well? Like I'm hoping 5 million, but the trailer views are kind of indicating closer to 3. It doesn't really matter. What matters is what are the sales going to be, and we have no idea. And again, the sales matter because we all want Metroid to come more often. Not necessarily rushed, but more dedication to it. But maybe not. So we say like more often. I'm just saying every 3 years. I want a Metroid game. Like if they can rotate side-scrolling and like the Prime series kind of games, that's 6 years of development per game, assuming they use different studios. That to me is plenty of time, I think, to possibly do one every 3 years. And that would be a cycle we've never seen with Metroid. They've never had that consistency. Zelda's had a cycle. Mario's had a cycle. Pokemon obviously has its cycle. We've never seen Metroid really hit that stride because they keep throwing a bunch of money at it. It's weird because Nintendo's throwing a bunch of money at Metroid that hasn't really felt like it's been justified. Like even the 3D Kirby game coming out doesn't really look like it's some sort of high budget game. Nintendo clearly didn't magically just throw them $100 million and say, let's make, they just have ambitions and they want to see if they can hit it. And we'll see what happens with that game. But Metroid legitimately has had big budgets and Nintendo's publicly talked about that. By the way, guys, we're talking big budgets for Nintendo. Them putting $100 million into a game is like unheard of. Nintendo doesn't do that kind of budget. They have put supposedly over $200 million into Smash Bros. Ultimate over the whole lifespan of that game's development time to today. And Breath of the Wild was reportedly over $300 million, and that's the most expensive game they've ever made. Which you can understand then why they kept pushing it to launch a new system, because Wii U was definitely not going to sell enough copies on its own to justify what they spent on that game.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Because while you've been talking, we've just been looking at like the Nintendo's YouTube page, right? Yep. And like just kind of looking at the views, like kind of like seeing your point. Like from what you've seen, like I've noticed that Metroid seems to have had the most 500 to 2 million view videos since E3. Like,
well, they've also put out more videos about that.
They've put out more. Not every single Metroid video is a banger, but they've had a handful get at least 500,000, and there's a couple that have hit 1+ million. There's one or two that have hit 2 million. Like there's nothing else that really exceeds 2 million, save for like Smash Directs and Breath of the Wild 2 trailer at E3.
Obviously, we know Breath of the Wild 2. That's a different level.
So I mean, just kind of looking at it, like it does feel like it's yeah. It seems like just based off that Metroid's got something going for it.
So Taker610 threw a $5 at us. Thank you so much, man. He said, Wii plus Switch is greater than 200 million in sales. N64, GameCube, Wii U is less than 70 million. I'm assuming he means combined. Is the casual market the biggest key to Nintendo's success? Are portables casual targeted?
I don't really
I've-
feel like the Switch audience is the same as the Wii audience, though. I don't think that's a fair.
Yeah, if someone buys a dedicated video game platform that solely plays video games, or that's the primary function of that, like obviously you can play Netflix and stuff on, but you're not buying a PlayStation 5 for Netflix. You might use the Netflix app on it, but that's not why you bought it. So people that buy any sort of dedicated gaming device today, I would not call them casual anymore, because they don't have to buy those to play games anymore. They already own devices in their pockets that they can play. Kids own tablets. They have all these other ways to play games that don't cost the parents more money or don't cost the adult more money. You already have them. You can play Fortnite on your phone. You don't have to buy a dedicated gaming device. So my thing is today versus the Wii era, which really started right before smartphones came out, and smartphones didn't really hit, big until about 4 years after they came out, because they came out in like 2007. It was by about 2011 when enough people started actually getting smartphones and replacing the phones they had and realizing the convenience of all the apps and all the things you can do. I think today in 2021, if you're buying a dedicated gaming platform, you're not casual anymore. Here's the thing too. We also have to be careful about that term casual, because
Casual
I feel
back
like
then implied something different than what it is now.
Yeah, like it used to. Casual used to imply that you barely played games. You might pick up a Wii and you'd play Wii Sports for a week, and then you might not touch your Wii again for 9 years. That's kind of what it implied. As a casual gamer is exactly what the word casual means.
Casual
You
implies that
casually
you're 90 years
consume
old.
games.
Mhm.
You don't get super into them, and you move on with your day. If you bought a dedicated gaming device, it was probably because of one game you saw, and then you played that game a little bit, and then you were done, and it collected dust. But that's not what casual has really morphed into today. Casual now means a broader audience. The funny thing is, that broader audience playing on phones and tablets might be playing games more per week than you are at home on your Switch, on your PlayStation 5, and on your Xbox Series X. And this isn't me challenging you to spend more time playing your dedicated gaming consoles. This is just me pointing out facts. The data is out there. Apple makes more money off video games than all these other companies do, and they don't even make games because of the number of people playing games on their platform and spending money on their platform on games. Bottom line is, there's a lot of people that they ain't gaming on their phones casually. They're gaming 50, 60 hours a week on their phone. They always have their charger or a battery bank nearby because they got to make sure their phone's charged, because they were playing games on the train. They were playing games. We talked about the Switch before, how you can play it on the train. That's what people have been doing with their phones this whole time too. As an example, Eric, I know, every time I'm around this guy, he's playing games on his phone.
Yeah.
It's insane.
But it's a different thing. At least in my brain it is. Like, I don't think it's fair for people to say, oh, mobile gaming's so much bigger. Like, it is, but it's also not really the same thing. Like, I would argue...
entirely. That's
all right, well,
we should have a
all right, hold on.
That.
All right.
Here's why I disagree with it. All the games that you find that are really popular on the phones were the exact sort of games we were playing on Game Boy back in the day. And would we call games like Tetris not a legit game? Not in a different category of other video games?
I don't agree.
I think what happened is certain genres of games that are really popular, such as puzzle games like Tetris, work better in a more convenient form factor that everybody has in their pocket. And when you look at all the really popular games on here, they all seem to fit in certain genre types that are super popular, but people don't want to spend $500, $600 on a dedicated game console anymore to play those experiences. That's my opinion, of course. I also get really upset when people try to categorize mobile gamers outside of the normal gaming community, because I feel like that's just creating classism. And we shouldn't have classism as gamers. We should accept everyone, no matter what device or game they play.
Let's get more detailed here, right? So I'm not trying to say that there aren't gamers on their phones, and I'm not saying that there aren't games that are close to your typical game experience on a console that are somewhat replicated on phones. Like, obviously that's there, but there's also just an abundance of free games and flash games and games with ads and things of that nature that are very different experiences that you would get on a console. They're just very different experiences, and I just don't think it's not really a fair comparison. Like, for example, I think some people use that argument to say that we should move away from the traditional gaming market, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say if you look at Switch sales, you look at PlayStation, Xbox sales, and PC sales, they're stronger now than they were 10 years ago. And yet still, you have the mobile market that's even greater than that. So I guess the only point I'm making is that it's not really, I just view them as two different things. Like
I get partially what you're saying, because, by the way, I'm not making any sort of argument that traditional console gaming should go anywhere. Obviously, audience dictates that. Audience is very healthy right now. Why would it go anywhere? Clearly, there's a big audience for dedicated gaming devices, just like dedicated gaming computers and laptops. There is an audience for that. Everyone who's excited for Steam Deck, yeah, you are a certain audience that enjoys dedicated gaming platforms. Nothing wrong with that. Obviously, it's really popular. The gaming community has grown over the years, not shrunk. Grown. It's a misnomer the gaming community has shrunk. That's not the case. My general point is, I don't like excluding people because of the platform they play and the games they play. I'll just say this. If you play video games on a phone or tablet and you identify yourself as a gamer, you're a gamer. If you play games, I don't care what device you play on. If you identify yourself as a gamer, you're a gamer. I don't care that the only game you play is Candy Crush or the only game you play. By the way, someone pointed out in the chat too, like, so when I'm playing Game Pass games on my phone, I'm what? Not as cool as the people playing it on Xbox? And it's kind of like, I get that too, because now even console gaming's become really accessible on these devices. Which, by the way, that's not to say there's not console level games on the devices. I know we actually have someone who watches our videos regularly who is a YouTuber that covers mobile games exclusively and has pointed out that there's actually quite a few console level games on phones that people just don't know about because they don't get talked about by the big mainstream gaming media. They don't really get talked about by anybody. So you really have to dig to find them, and that's the conundrum of phone. Is as big as the audience is, it's really hard unless you're a company that's already established in there to really get noticed. Like if Zynga releases a brand new mobile game, you'll hear about it because it'll be advertised in every other popular mobile game they have. Whereas someone who's just starting out, unless they have, like me, if I made one, I already have an initial audience here at my channel to at least kickstart a potential install base of a game, but not everybody has that. So I guess my general arguments for it are that I am never comfortable separating out a group of people who play games because of the device they play on. The way that you like try to separate it out, it's like, yeah, but so PlayStation gamers and Xbox gamers and Nintendo gamers are all different too. So are PC gamers. Yeah, there's some crossover, but for the most part, you can fundamentally define the audiences a little different between those platforms. So why do we have to do anything different with phones? Phones, to me, are just another way to game that's just convenient. To me, again, a lot of people that play phone games, my fiance plays a lot of phone games and she wouldn't call herself a gamer. And that's fine. If you don't want to identify as a gamer, cool. Because sometimes there's some things that come along with the term gamer that people aren't comfortable with, which is weird. Because as games have become more acceptable in society, there's still a little bit of stigma that if you're a gamer, you're a 40-year-old drinking Mountain Dew, eating Doritos in your parents' basement, playing World of Warcraft all day. And that general media, it's because the general media hasn't really accepted gaming. Just to be clear, this has more to do with all the big news.
I don't even like the term gamer. Like, you can say whatever you want. Everyone's entitled to say whatever you want. But personally, when I think of the term gamer, I don't know. For me, it's almost a little cringy because I don't even feel like there should be a need to label yourself. I feel like games is something that we should all be able to inherently enjoy.
Like as an example.
But you know what I mean, right? Like I feel like games in general shouldn't be something that only a certain type of person does. I think games is just something that people as a whole do.
I think
assuming you have access to it.
Gamers had some stigmatism attached to it that I'm obviously not comfortable with. I don't think most people that are mature adults are comfortable with some of the stigmatisms that get attached to that word, and it makes us be like, why are we even using that word? Okay, well then how do we tell people who enjoy watching sports? Aren't they sports fans? What do we talk about people who play games? Aren't they gaming fans? Gamers, sports fans. It's just terms to define something you enjoy.
Sure. And here's another point I want to bring up. And the problem with
gamer, by the way, is that it's become a term that people are taking to define who they are. And that, I think, is the big problem where sports fans, we're huge sports fans here. We don't define ourselves by our sports fandom. We could love the Packers, Brewers, Bucks,
Right.
Minnesota
You're not
Wild.
a
It doesn't really matter
supporter.
who it is. We could love all these teams, but we wouldn't walk around and be like, this defines who we are. Just like me. I do Nintendo Prime. I have a YouTube channel. I have a good time. I don't walk around all day once I'm out of the studio defining myself by anything that happens on this YouTube channel or anything that happens in any particular game I play. Gaming is just something I enjoy. So I'm a sports fan. I'm a gamer. I also really enjoy reading a good book once in a blue moon. Wouldn't say I'm an avid reader, but I have a couple series I've actually been getting back into lately. So like I'm also a parent. Like being a gamer to me is just like being a parent. It's just something that defines a segment of your life. Now being a parent's a little bit different because that's like you're a parent even if you don't want to be. Once you have children. Shouldn't say that. I guess you could technically give your kids.
I really wanted to make a pun with the word apparent versus a parent, but
No,
you're
you're
good,
good. You're good. I get it.
I just want to add another little
Sure.
note. Like, while I personally just don't like the term gamer, you can say however you want. That's fine. It's just a personal preference for me. Like, I also don't like when people say "let's go." Like, it just personally, I just don't like it. But
so how would you
me,
define like? Okay, so do you enjoy sports? I mean, I happen to know you do, but do you enjoy sports?
Yeah, so the point I want to make is that yeah, I'm a sports fan, but I'm also a board game fan.
Sure.
I'm also a party game fan. I am a video game fan.
So then what's wrong?
For me,
so then
the idea of a gamer is just someone who likes games in general. When I say games, I don't think just video games. I think games.
Oh, you're expanding it into the subcategory, like board games.
Yeah, they're all games to me.
They're
just different kinds of games.
Yep, you're right. Yep.
The idea of just putting yourself into either a competitive game or a game that dives into a certain narrative. Because, for example, board games, they can be very RPG-esque. Like, obviously, there's like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. Like, there's different kinds of games. And kind of going to your point, I don't like putting things into certain holes or categories. It is what it is. Like, there are games. You play them if you like them. If you don't like them, you don't have to play them. But it doesn't mean there won't be a game you won't like to play.
Yeah. No, what? Yeah, I have a grander issue with some other things in the gaming industry, but I'll talk about that a different time. Farting Blood did a $2 super chat.
Nice.
What a great username.
That's a great
Says,
username.
will I give a review of Dread? I will probably not be doing a full review, but I will do some final impressions next week. If you're not interested in it, it's fine. I don't actually expect that video to do very well. For me, a YouTube channel that doesn't traditionally do reviews, the only chance a review has to do well is if I release a review before everybody else, which requires I get review copies of games and willing to break NDA. I don't get review copies of games, and if I did, I wouldn't break NDA. So, reviews aren't really a big part of my channel, so that is what it is. But I will do at least one video next week talking about Metroid Dread impressions. Taker610 also did a $2 super chat and says, what explains such a discrepancy, do you think? So like the term gamer, I don't even know who coined that term, by the way. I'd have to. No. It's been around as long as I've been alive. Yeah. It's been around since before I was alive. So I'm not sure how it came into being. Because obviously, if you walk around and tell people you're a sports fan, no one bats an eye. They just think, okay, cool, you enjoy sports, not a big deal. You tell people you're into board games, they don't think it's a big deal. And like he said, he encompasses, board games into the whole gamer thing because they are games. Bottom line, video games, board games, they're all types of games, card games, they're all games. And in the same vein, you could say, hey, when you play tag, it's a game. When you do all this stuff, it's a game. But here's the thing. You still will separate it out because you say, like, I'm a fan of sports. Well, sports are just games. And yet you'll still separate out sports. So even in your own little way you rationalize it, there's still certain things that you might be like, okay, but this is a little different in some certain way. Maybe because of the physical activity of it or whatever. Makes it fundamentally different because video games, I know some VR games can be really intense. And yes, we have Ring Fit and Wii Fit. There's exceptions to the rules. But in general, video games and or board games are generally things that you just kind of sit around and casually do. And I say casually, I don't mean it in the sense of being a casual player. That's not what I mean. It's just something you don't think about. It's just something you do. Because that's what it's been my whole life. I play video games, I play board games. It's just something I do. I don't think about it. So to me, that's what I look at as casual. Is just something's casual when it's just part of your life without thinking about it. But that being said, I think a lot of the discrepancy with the term gamer, because you notice we say sports fan. We don't say, oh, I'm a video game fan. No, I'm a gamer. I think that term gamer was coined a long time ago. I'm not sure how, but
looks like it was possibly 81.
81.
Yep, Arcade Alley was referred to as coined the term video gamer, likely inspired by war gamer. But the term gamer itself goes all the way back to 1422, talking about any dice player, card or tennis player, or other unlawful gamer.
Yeah. Okay. But see, if you think about that though, unlawful gamer, negative context to the term gamer. It's something you're not supposed to do. And so then you see that term used today, and this is ironic that that's actually where that specific term came from, was people who weren't supposed to be unlawfully doing these kinds of games, because the media has spent decades blasting video games and trying to blame video games for every single problem in society, because the media has just had a fundamental misunderstanding of what games do to people's psyche and what games are. It's really weird. We have this thing happening in China right now, which has been really, really weird. Watching them lock down games in such a way that you can only play them like an hour a week if you're under 18. And it's really weird what they're doing over there. Now, China's a whole another can of worms to open up over a lot of different things. But it's because they're villainizing gaming. They're trying to blame gaming for issues in the country. Australia, if you ever wonder why Australia prices for everything gaming are so high, it's not because these companies like Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft are rolling in saying we want to charge you more here. It's because the government has ruled several times against video games. The government thinks video games are a problem. However, Australia is a bit of a free country, so they're not going to say you can't play it. They're just going to make it stupidly expensive. So, like, there is this embedded perception of gaming among a certain crowd of people that gaming is a negative. It provides nothing but negative influence. It's a waste of your time, bare minimum. If people go, okay, fine, it doesn't make you more violent, it doesn't make you more this, maybe it's even an outlet for you to get rid of some of your stress or whatever, fine. But also, don't you think there's better things you could be doing? You could be out on a boat fishing. And I'd like to have them explain to me how that's a better use of my time. I guess because I'll catch something I might eat, maybe. I'm still just sitting there waiting. So I'm not sure how it's a better use of time. It's just a different use of time for a different type of activity. And I think, obviously, during this pandemic, things have started to become more acceptable. Which, by the way, the reason I feel like things have become more acceptable overall for gaming in general is just because games have been mainstream now long enough that there's a whole new generation of youth that are now, like me, in the 30s, in the early 40s, that, yeah, we grew up with games too. We don't really think it's that weird that people play games as adults. Not a big deal.
Because it's
the
part of
people
our
who
life.
think it's weird are the people that are still like 60s, 70s, 80s, and are in that generation that's kind of on its way out, as the original gaming generation's taking over, and it just keeps growing from there. So I feel like the term gamer is losing some of that luster of being a negative thing, but still, it was founded apparently as a negative, and it was referred by the media for so long as a negative to be associated with that term. And that does beg the difference. Should we come up with a different term, or should we just call ourselves video game fans or game fans? It's also, you know what? It's like everything. Things change meaning over time. Lots of words have changed, even from when I was a kid to today. To be careful, certain things I say that I'm like, what do you mean this is, how is that offensive? What? I'm waiting for the day that I say the word sweet, and suddenly it's an offensive word. And I'm like, but like literally, I bit into this apple and it tastes sweet. You're being racist. How? Because somebody changed the meaning of a word I grew up with? I'm confused. Like, it's like, okay, as an example, my grandma, bless her heart, every now and then she'll use the word gay, and she's using it to mean happy, because that's what it meant to her entire life. But when she uses that in certain settings, people start looking at her like she's suddenly like anti all this stuff, and it's
she's
like
got six heads. Yeah.
She just says that you look really happy. She's not trying to offend anyone. But like that's the thing. Like people have this fundamental. I guess fundamental. I'm not going to go into the whole wanting to be upset about things thing, but I will say a fundamental, not knowledgeable about different generations and how they grew up and how terminology has changed over the years. That's leading sometimes to some things that get misunderstood. And I feel like gamer is one of those things, even to this day. There's that certain generation that if you say you're a gamer, you're wasting your life. You are a waste of a human being if you're playing video games. It's really strange, but it's starting to go away. So that's the positive
It's
thing.
just kind of like, if you watch a movie, are you now an avid movie watcher, right? Like
movies used to be, by the way, viewed in the same way as video games. If you wasted your time going to the movie theater, you're wasting your life.
the
But
same
now
also play with
everybody
music,
does
right?
it, so now it's considered acceptable. So it's not a big deal, and that's what's happening with gaming. Finally, it just took
Or
3
like
decades.
book nerd or whatever. Like reading books, listening to music, watching movies, playing sports, playing video games. I don't think because you do those things you should just be that's what you are. No, it's just a part of life.
It's
Those are
something you
things that
enjoy.
humans do.
They're forms of entertainment that you enjoy. It doesn't have to define you. I'm into a bunch of different things, but because one of those things for a large part of my life was considered a negative, that term still has a slight negative connotation to it. And apparently it's always had a negative connotation to it. So I'm sure it was some
growing
media
up,
member that threw it out there.
they
We're
always
just gonna
tried
call you
to
gamers as a
growing up, they
as a
always tried to
negative.
like control the amount of time I would play games, and there was always like this fear that I would just be a strong like video game nerd, and that's what my life would become. And I mean, sure, like it's obviously a passion of mine, but I mean, I create content. Half of what I do isn't playing video games. It's making news videos and editing, right? And then there's the games that I play, but then I do other stuff. I work out. I read.
Right.
I play sports. Like I don't like looking at like what my parents feared as a kid. I would say just personally, like I feel like there's just a number of things I enjoy doing.
Absolutely.
I would say the fact that I do YouTube is like the realization of all of my parents' fears.
Yes,
Just to be completely honest. My parents hate that I do YouTube. So like this is like the realization of everything they hate. Putting yourself out there in front of people, where suddenly not everything's private anymore. Accelerating your video games into something more than just games. Like, no, you're wasting your life. And they won't say anything negative against it more than once a year now. Just had an argument with my mom last month. It's funny because she became like a supporter of the channel during E3, and she saw all the views and she thought it was so cool. And then she called me one day because I made some post on Facebook or something that had nothing to do with video games or anything. And she's like, "Oh, are you finally done with that YouTube stuff? I'm so proud of you." I'm like, "Mom, no. No, this had nothing to do with that. This was about one of my kids. What? You are really desperately holding on that I give up one of my passions." And I just said, "I understand you come from an era where this is a negative. Just so you know, you shouldn't encourage your children to give up on their passions in life. I'm just letting you know. If you ever wonder why there's been a disconnect so many years with us, it's because you have been against my passion my entire life. At some point, maybe it's going to take this YouTube thing making millions of dollars someday. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but it'll have to take probably like YouTube, me being a big enough YouTuber where I can look at my mom and buy her a house. Yeah. Well, then she'll be like, "Oh, I guess it wasn't a waste of time."
Yeah.
Or she'll think it's cursed money.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. She's like, you could just work at McDonald's all the time. I'm like, "You're right, and I'd make less money than I do on YouTube. So what's your point?"
Yeah.
Like, it's like she'd be more respectful of me if I worked a normal 9 to 5 at like a fast food place. It's crazy to me. Anyways, we got this funny super chat in.
Oh God.
It's funny because I still don't know how this username is getting by YouTube's own filter system.
Yeah.
But the username goes, this guy's super chatted a few other times. He always, I think, just does it because the name is funny.
Yeah.
Smash my butt, Sakurai. Oh, yeah, baby.
Yep. Fantastic.
Super chatted $2 and said, "Thanks for being awesome." Thanks for having an awesome username that somehow gets around YouTube's filters. Right? And I don't know how you did it, but enjoy having Sakurai want to smash you.
Yep.
Smash or pass, right?
Yep.
Smash or pass. Multiple meanings. All right, so briefly, we obviously have this system coming out here. This is a platform that comes out the same day as Metroid Dread. I mentioned earlier that I felt like this is kind of the system made for adults. Now, this particular one is beat to hell and not put back together right and completely broken and only works in dock mode. So, like, you want to see the screen looks like, you're not going to get it, won't turn on.
No.
Just so you're aware.
No,
he has not yet seen it in person, and now that he's here, he's still not going to see it in person.
That's fine. Yeah.
I will have a new working one on Friday.
Maybe
if you
next
want to stop by. But anyways, it broke during my ultimate teardown thing. You guys can go watch my video on that today if you want. We got to look at who makes the screen and all the other stuff. But yeah, it to me, one, it's what Switch should have been to begin with, to be completely honest. But beyond all
it feels like
that,
it does tabletop right.
Oh yeah, it does tabletop right. The kickstand on this thing's amazing.
Yeah, holy cow.
Yeah, and the bigger screen makes just tabletop a little bit easier to sort of
and
do.
just the build quality in general is better. The rails are slightly redesigned and a little bit tighter.
Okay.
So there's
They
a
don't
little
feel
bit less
janky
wobble
anymore.
on the. Well, don't worry about the flex.
No. I feel like there's a lot less flex.
Yeah, I was gonna say the flex right now. It's not. I don't have all the screws in the thing.
No, but I even without all the screws, I feel like there's
there's
flex.
less flex than the original. And I don't mind if you bend the hell out of it because the thing's garbage anyways at this point.
Well, the Joy-Cons are probably still.
Well, the Joy-Cons are great. The Joy-Cons are great. The dock is good. But like everything about it feels like a more premium build quality.
More sturdy.
Yes.
Like, it feels
and
a little bit heavier.
even when you just look at it, one, this feels. I don't know if this is metal for sure, but it kind of feels like, and it's always cool to the touch, like metal is. This up here is a type of plastic, but it's a matte plastic, and just the way everything on here is designed. This feels like a modern device, despite the fact it has the exact same internal chip. And this isn't me trying to sell you guys on buying one, because again, if you only play in dock mode for starters, there's literally no reason to get it. Unless you just really want white Joy-Cons that badly, I would say just buy Joy-Con shells and change them yourself, but then maybe you're not okay doing that. Fine, hire me to do it. I've done it before.
It wouldn't surprise me if Nintendo came out with white Joy-Cons here in the
next. They probably will sell them on their own eventually.
Yeah.
Or maybe they won't. I have no idea. But I do think that it's just a system to me that, I held this system up before I tore it apart and broke it, and held up my other Switch in front of my kids, and I said, "Hey, which one do you want to play?" And they instantly went for my old one. And then I'm like, "Why?" Like, Dad, this one looks like one I'm gonna break. The screen is just so big, and I'm like, "Okay."
Cool. Yeah, you keep thinking that. You keep messing with my old one. That's fine. You ain't touching this one.
I mean, if you break my old one now, it's okay. I got a new one on Friday.
It was also.
I'd like to complete a full system transfer first, but if it doesn't happen, it's okay.
Really funny though.
I'm not really playing Splatoon 2 anymore, so not that big a deal if I lose my data.
Before you're taking.
Charles Trudell is wondering why I'm smiling so much. I'm just appreciating the story. There's nothing more beyond my smile than that.
Yeah.
I just. Oh, you know what? Actually, I'm a little envious of that Switch OLED. Just say it.
You're envious that I broke it, or you're envious that I've had it for a week?
That is just a little confusing for me. I saw your video on it; it was entertaining, but I don't even want to think about the fact that it's broken.
What's pecking at you? Yeah. Ask away. I
don't know. There's nothing. I got nothing to say. I mean, I'm not going to ask you how you got it. I'm just.
I've already said publicly how I got it. I'll repeat it.
I missed that. Well, how'd you? I know you bought it from someone.
Yeah.
Or some entity that's not Nintendo.
Of course.
How'd you get it?
The same way every other YouTuber who's had it for the last week got it. There was a person on a reseller app in California. I won't go into exactly where they're located. If Nintendo wants to hunt them down, that's on them.
I had honestly assumed that you just had gotten like a sponsorship by Nintendo. They had sent you one.
That's what a lot of people think about all these. Kevin Kenson, no. Kevin Kenson got it from the same people. So did Beat 'em Ups. So did Bob Wolf. We all got it from the same person who was on a reseller app in California, and he originally only had a couple of them and sold them. And I found out about this because of a fan of ours bought one off of him, and it turned out to be legit. And he was obviously selling it for scalper prices because you can't get the thing, so it's profitable. For him to do it, and I asked this fan, hey, can we get in contact with him and maybe see if he happens to have any more? I'd be willing to pay a premium to see if because since it's legit, if I can get it.
Can you tell me? Can you give me a ballpark of that premium?
$650.
Okay, that's less than double.
That
Barely.
included though next day shipping. So
Oh,
next
that's
day
nice.
shipping, by the way, is stupidly expensive.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
So
Either way, just
I don't
looking
shy
at
away
that
from it.
makes
Other
me
YouTube,
smile.
because like one thing you guys know about my channel, I ain't gonna lie to you guys. I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, this is how I got it. I don't know the name of the guy. I couldn't turn him in even if I wanted to.
Mhm.
But bottom line is, that's how I got it, and that's how all of us got it, and all of us paid a premium to have it early. And so if I was gonna pay a premium to have it early, people like got mad at me because I broke it, and it's like, what do you think I paid a premium to have it early for?
I mean, I feel bad.
exactly?
I feel bad that you spent that much money for one, but you have one.
See,
That's broken.
I've heard this
This is
sentiment
just
a
a
few times
confusing
today.
thing for me to watch. Like, I'm envious of you for having one, but I'm also upset that you spent that much money just because you're my friend, and it's like you spent that much for it. But then you had it, so I'm also jealous. But then it's so beautiful, so I'm also happy. But then I realize it's broken,
Right.
so I'm like, ugh. But I'm like, oh, I really want one. Like,
I
it's
think
just,
this is the conundrum with some of the people who have watched my videos. They're like, we really love your videos. You've done a great job, but why did you have to break it? Why this? Why that? I'm like, well, one, I have a brand new one on Friday, so it's like not even that big a deal to me for it to be broken. And two, it was a lot of money. I just don't worry about that sometimes, because one thing I've discovered, this by the way, this is the first time I've ever had a platform before it's came out before. Nintendo's never sent me one. I've had games early before with NDAs and everything, but I've never had a system early. So the fact that I got my hands on the system, which we'll see. I'm wondering if this guy's going to start getting everything early all the time. That would be kind of crazy. If I could suddenly get my hands on future Nintendo platforms early. He'd probably be busted by then. But the thing is, what I've discovered in the last week, outside of how much I actually enjoy this, and I'm really glad I'm getting one on Friday. Like, I could have canceled my pre-order and not broke this one and been fine. But the thing is, I realized over the last week how much I enjoy making unique content that you can't get anywhere else. So I can be honest right now, I have not made my money back on this thing. Like, people might go, well, you got to make all those videos. Those videos in totality have not made me my money back. And they're not even close. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't care about that. Here's what I care about. I got to make some one-of-a-kind content you guys couldn't see anywhere else. We had the world's first unboxing in the US right here on my channel. That happened. It wasn't the world's first unboxing. It happened in Japan, but the world's first unboxing period happened right here on my channel. That's cool. I got to do something that other people couldn't do at the time. Beyond all of that, we obviously were the first people in the world to take apart the dock and compare it. That's really cool that I can do that. And a lot of you guys saw it got spread on a lot of YouTube channels yesterday. Not all of them were linking to me. That's a general issue I have with a lot of YouTubers in general who don't source any of their news. I think it's really kind of crappy they don't do that. And I know they might say, well, they mentioned it in the video. You can mention a source in the video all you want. You're putting it on the user to hit Google and try to find things when you can literally just put the link in the description. Just saying, this is a criticism I have. I'm not saying that Andres does this. It's just in general. Like, I can literally say Spawn Wave. I called him out on it one time 2 years ago, and he's been doing it ever since. Because he said, you're right. Why aren't we doing this? And to me, this is because a lot of YouTubers, by the way, I know why it doesn't happen. Most YouTubers weren't journalists first. I was a journalist first. So I know the importance of sourcing and having easy links that people can go verify your information. It also absolves you of the ultimate responsibility for false reports.
I'm curious what you think though, because if it's like something that's like new information, I'll post the source, right? But if it's something that I've been talking about the channel multiple times, I won't post
it's
the
only
source.
the first time you bring it up.
Because the thing is, like, because when we talk about things, right, it's really like it's built upon article after article after article, like going back months. Like, so like after a certain point, like you can't reasonably just source 76 articles every single video.
But you can source your original videos that you first mentioned.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I try to do. Yeah. I try to do unless it's like
that creates the trickle. You even see this on actual news articles like CNN. There'll be like an update to a story that's a brand new article, and they'll just link their old article that'll have the original sources linked within it. That's just as long as you create a source trail that people can just go tap, 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 tap. There we go. Instead of having to go to Google and physically search for things, which doesn't always work out. It can be really hard because I can't tell you the number of times that people come to my videos and I find this hilarious because they just assume I don't have any sources. We're gonna say you're just making this up. No one else has reported on this. It's fake news. I'm like, no one else has reported on it. I literally get all my news from everywhere else. Why don't you go down in my description and check out my sources? And then they're like, oh shit. I'm like, yeah, I know. Not most
Kinda
YouTubers
dumb, right?
don't actually link their sources, so
Mhm.
that's how you can know
I
if someone's making up shit or not. It's
you
hard to
ever
know on
see
some
some of
channels if
those?
they're making stuff up because they'll say, "Oh yeah, this source so and so said this," and it's like, okay, do you have proof of this anywhere, or are you the source?
Mhm.
Oh, you're
This
not the
is my
source, but you're also not going to link us
yeah
to where you got it from. That's
right.
weird.
My pet peeve is similar. I mean, I don't like it either. But for me, like just like in particular, especially go back a couple years ago, like those Smash speculation videos say, "Oh, there's this crazy rumor leak might be true or is true," you know, even though it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, "Okay, well, what is it?" And they're like, "Oh, so on 4chan this happened." And I'm like, "Okay, great. So this is definitely bullshit. But could you at least provide the source so I could look at it for myself?" And they
Even when
won't
they
do
say
that.
4chan, right? Like,
There
it's
can
fine.
still
Okay,
be
you
a
told me it's
link.
4chan. Can you link to the 4chan thread at least? Like,
No.
They
can I
don't.
at least look at this thing? You're just saying 4chan in general, which, by the way, legit leaks happen to 4chan all the time, guys.
Mhm.
It happens.
It's just 99% of the stuff is fake and made up because it's anonymous.
By
And
the
anyone
way,
can say anything.
the Sora one, apparently that there was like this big Sora leak thing going around. That was from 4chan. So I don't
Yes.
know if it was a coincidence, but it may have been a legitimate leak. So
One, Sora ended up coming true, obviously. And two,
yeah,
it was the way in which it was all worded that actually made it feel like this is different than other leaks. Other leaks like
sure.
Sora's going to be in, and I'm going to tell you exactly how the reveal trailer is going to go and all
Yeah.
this. And this person's like, no, here's the deal. Here's all I know. I work at Disney Music, and hey, Nintendo had to contact us for permission to use some songs. That's it. He didn't provide any other details. He said, well, logically, the only conclusion I can have from that is Kingdom Hearts and Sora. Why
Mhm.
else would they need permission from us for anything? And that was it. And it was like super vague. And like, by the way, those are the kind of rumors that are kind of like, okay, those ones might be real because that's a realistic situation we can all
Sure. You know what would have
vision.
been funny
This is
though?
not someone saying they know Sora is going to be there. This is someone saying, hey, they did contact us for music rights.
You remember Epic Mickey?
Yeah.
What if we got Mickey Mouse instead? Like, and they said Sora based off the information, but they interpreted that information to be Sora, and it was
Which
a
obviously
smart
ended up being correct.
interpretation.
It was a
But
guess. It was always a guess on that rumor part by the person who said, hey,
But
He didn't even
it's
say
an
what songs he
example of
contacted
what
him.
happens with rumors, though, right? Like sometimes you have someone who gets legitimate information, and then they surmise what it means. You know, they make that
Yes.
mental leap, and oftentimes they're wrong.
Yes. And this is why, like, even in my rumor videos that I do, guys, I always try to make sure, like, here's the actual rumor. This is all my opinion on it or my summation of it. And this is something that I'm always careful with whenever I report on Samus Hunter rumors, because she has a tendency to inject her opinion on what that information means, and does a really bad job of separating that out. So like she'll say, "Oh yeah, I was look at this information. I was right on it. Yeah, but the way you phrased what was going to happen wasn't right, but the information was correct. Your interpretation of that information was not." Need to separate that out better, and I've told her behind the scenes that you need to do a better job of clarifying your opinion versus known knowledge that you have. And this is just true for, I think, anyone who reports on rumors, that like it's okay to have your opinion, of course. It's just make sure that, and this is a criticism of mainstream media as well. They're really bad about separating the facts from the conversation around the facts. They muddle it together because they obviously have. I don't think it's too controversial to say that most of these major organizations have some agendas on hand with how they cover certain stories. I try not to have any agendas with any of the stuff I report on, other than I just want to put together a good video, and I hope a lot of people want to watch it. And if not, oh well, life moves on. Like, I'm going to do a Metroid impression video next week, Metroid Dread one, even though I know it's not going to do well, because I kind of want to just get going with a bit more impressions on games, and it gives me more excuses to justify to myself to set time aside to play games versus just making the next YouTube video or making the next this. Because guys, I love playing games. I really enjoy it, but like I'll be sitting there playing a game, and since I don't really do anything on my channel with playing games, like I don't do reviews, I don't do impressions, So it's kind of like I keep thinking as I'm playing the game, oh, maybe I should check Twitter, or I should check this and see what the latest news is. See if I should be using this time for YouTube instead. Because I just feel a dedication to you guys and a dedication to what I do here, and I enjoy it, obviously. So I don't know. I had a couple super chats. Taker 6 cents said I might upgrade for the aesthetics alone. I mean, yeah, it's a more premium feeling Switch. Same base Tegra X1 that they put in the version 2 in the Switch Lite. Someone also did, I think, a $5 super chat. Asked something else. Ragnarok with $5. Thank you so much for the support, guys. So does it feel closer to the Lite and how solid it feels? The Lite feels like a children's Fisher-Price toy in comparison. You remember how like the Wii U gamepad felt when you moved from that? Maybe you guys don't because you didn't own one. But if you did, and you moved from that to the Switch, and the Switch just made that gamepad feel like some Fisher-Price aftermarket Chinese knockoff that you bought on AliExpress. Maybe you got it on Wish.com. I don't know. One of those just massive knockoff. Like, this was a real product Nintendo put out. Look at this thing. Now when you take that original Switch and the Switch Lite, and you hold them in your hands and you play, and then you grab this and play, those feel like Fisher-Price toys. Both of them. The OG.
Can't wait for Switch 2.
Yeah, like whatever.
When that
and here's the
feels
thing.
even sleeker somehow.
This sets the standard for whatever Nintendo is going to do now. If they do a hybrid handheld again, one, they win OLED. Can't go back. It's got to be OLED again to start.
Yeah.
Look at the nice Surface-style kickstand. They're going to be a kickstand. You can't go back to the crappy one. Of course, Nintendo might find a way to do that, but they shouldn't. They shouldn't, because they already have the manufacturing in place for this. So
I'm just curious how they're going to
want
set
to see happen
it
with a
apart.
future Switch. Obviously, we'd like to see the Joy-Cons redesigned a little bit, especially the joysticks. We'd obviously like to see a number of other things maybe improved. A better Wi-Fi chip, as an example. It would be nice, Nintendo, if you took your Wi-Fi chip seriously, because it's not just about people who can't get it to connect to their networks. When they are connected, something in your software or the chip itself is limiting the speeds for no real good reason other than we just want to limit the speeds. So, please do something about all that in the future. But the bottom line is, this is a great system, and I don't see why this can't continue to be super popular for years to come. All that has to happen with Nintendo's next device is basically just give us this exact same thing, but with better internals. Mm-hmm. The problem I think Nintendo's going to have, if they decide to stick with this for another generation, is just how are they going to make that new one look different enough from the old one?
Right. I wanted to talk a little bit about that before. I'm assuming we're almost done, but
yeah, we
like
are almost done. Yep.
Like you look at iPhone, and every year they come out with 4 different new iPhones, and
they look mostly the same as the old ones.
They look the same. They just move the camera.
They move the camera thing around for the 13. Oh, let me take the 12 camera and let me just put it over here instead. Now it's different. It's like,
right, and they make sure to change the dimensions slightly so you can't use your cases or screen protectors from the prior.
You gotta buy all new accessories.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But like that's how. But you think about it, like phones get away with that all the time, and every once in a while there's like a bigger change. Like obviously on the iPhone, it was like when they added the notch. That was a big visual change to the look of the iPhone. And now they're looking at maybe shrinking or getting rid of the notch eventually, and that'll be another big visual change. But then that kind of goes back to the way it looked before. So I don't know. Obviously I think right now some of the best things happening in phones are from companies that are experimenting, ones that are doing like the flip phones with the bendable screens and stuff like that. I feel like that's kind of a unique way to take what we currently have, shrink it down for portability, but still not lose any functionality.
Do you think we get
eventually
by the way, DS style Switch where you have a dual
screen switch?
Clamshell,
I don't think so.
Bendable.
Because here's the thing: if they're gonna do that, they can't have a top screen that's this big.
The Z Flip Fold, that thing costs like $1,800.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
It depends on which model, but it's where like it's approaching used car prices.
Yeah.
So like to think that Nintendo could maybe go in that direction, let's say for next generation, there's just no way. Yeah, there's just no way. It's too expensive.
I think that
it's also not even. It's almost. I don't even know if it's necessarily better. It's almost just like tangential, like So it would depend.
Well, if you think about it, all like a flip phone is why people liked them when they were younger. Back when we used to have the what were those? The
Razors.
The Razors, right? Those are the ones that a lot of people have, were the Razor flip phones. See, the reason people liked them is not only because it looked cool, it actually made the phone physically bigger. So you had the little Nokias that were like this,
Yeah.
but then when you unfolded a razor, it went from being this long to being this long, which fit better ear to mouth like this. So you could actually get better quality audio and voice. Also, obviously, because you had a dedicated bottom surface to try to text from, you could actually text message, even though you still had to hit the button 3 times. You could still text message, and that became more popular after flip phones came out. Then they had slider phones and a whole bunch of other
Yeah, I
variations
could
on
see
that.
Nintendo getting rid of the Joy-Cons.
You think
Like
they're gonna
I
get
could
rid of
see
them?
No, I'm not saying they will, but I could see them maybe thinking, well, this is neat, but let's just have it so our Pro Controller breaks in half instead. You know, like something like that. Like, so because, you know, like you could conceivably give us a Switch, maybe it does fold, right? So it becomes more compact, but it still fits into a dock. You pull it out, but when you fold it out, the controls are just kind of like, you know, maybe like a Game Boy Advance or like the Switch, but it's just attached, like a Switch Lite, really. Like that's what it would be. And then when you want to use that Joy-Con thing, the Pro Controller can split into 2. Like it just has that functionality. Like conceivably they could do that.
I just want Nintendo to be iterative. And I've never really said that before because people usually get excited about, we don't know what Nintendo's next gen system is going to be because they keep doing all these different things. And it's like, well, DS to 3DS was pretty iterative. They introduced the 3D technology, but it was the same base concept for a system. And I would like to, while that necessarily didn't maybe work out the way Nintendo hoped, obviously they went from 150 million DSs to half of that with 3DS. They obviously hoped they could catch lightning in a bottle twice. What I will say is that this is different than that. This feels like a more modern device like adults already own, and we're used to just getting those iterative upgrades where visually it'll look very similar, but internally it could be very different.
Yeah.
As an example, it could look exactly like this, but this 7-inch screen is 1080p instead of 720.
There'll be some very minor aesthetic differences,
Yeah.
but it's going to come more down just to the branding and marketing of the box and what they're saying.
Yep.
Like you said, the internals. This is a 4K Switch. This is what it does. Your games are in 4K. Your games are consistently at higher frame rate resolutions. Better Wi-Fi
Nintendo
card.
Actually, be clear in their marketing.
I mean, they've done a pretty decent job this generation.
Well, they've done decent with Switch, but they haven't always done decent with like very clear with the Wii, not so much with the Wii U.
Yeah,
very clear
but this
with
is
the
a
Switch,
different. This
feels
is a
like now it's time for
Nintendo.
not so much with the next.
I think the team they have together now, like they understand. And actually, I want to talk a little bit about just that whole transition because you were talking about how Nintendo at times has been iterative. The NES to the SNES to the N64 to the GameCube, I would argue, pretty iterative. Like, sure, there were innovations, but it was all kind of like a steady, straight line.
Same means. Yeah.
Right. It seemed like it was a linear progression. The Wii was a sort of a side move a little bit. But then you look at the handhelds, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy. I mean, I understand Game Boy Color is almost like the OLED of that, but you get my point. Of the Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, and even the DS, I feel like was still iterative upon the Game Boy Advance because everything the Advance was just more and better. And then the 3DS. So you could argue with handhelds, Nintendo actually has been iterative, like it has been on a linear progression, even though we didn't know where that progression was going until the 3DS, and then they moved to the side or the diagonal to the Switch, right? And then with the home consoles, because they've had less success after the GameCube, they became more experimental. They did the Wii. They thought maybe they could catch lightning in a bottle again with a different weird gimmick, but still do the Wii at the same time. So they did the Wii U, and that failed. And then they came to the Switch, and it's become successful. So, I mean, I think, even though it seems like there's this history of Nintendo doing weird, bonkers things and not having a linear progression and being iterative with their upgrades, I think that has more to do with the fact that they knew that they didn't have something that worked. Now with the Switch, they know they have something that works. So they don't have a reason to do something stupid. And hope it works.
Being Nintendo.
I mean,
besides being Nintendo.
we hope. Here's the thing. Another thing they also consider in the future of Nintendo and their next platform or whatever's coming is that we have new leadership.
Yeah.
This is Shintaro Furukawa's Nintendo now. He's the ultimate person that says yes at the end of the day on what's going to happen at the company. I know it's not exactly a dictatorship like that. Of course, they do have a whole council of people and stuff like this that handle all the decisions. But he's obviously the one that's going to guide them towards what he thinks is obviously the future. And he's not a gamer. He is not in tune with gamers. He is a businessman. In particular, he was an accountant for a long time. And one thing that's exciting, if you enjoy this prospect, is that people that know a lot about money sometimes can objectively look at the things that make money and realize we just need to keep doing more of that thing instead of trying to do a new thing. And they might go, but because he's mentioned in interviews, in investors meetings and everything, that like he's been at Nintendo for 20 years and he's watched them go super, super high and then just fall off a cliff and not really seem to know how to get back up. And yes, Nintendo's gotten back up successfully, but they've sometimes wasted a whole generation in between to do that. And like, you know, he wasn't around necessarily when the NES, SNES, and N64 and then GameCube happened, which, by the way, each successive system did worse than the previous one. Which, by the way, a Switch 2 might not sell as well as the Switch 1. We don't know. But the thing is I think he's fundamentally looked at it, saw what Nintendo has done, and realized there's two things that need to happen. Well, really three things. One, we need to not confuse consumers when we release our next product. If we confuse the consumers, that product's going to fail. It doesn't really matter what it is. We can't confuse them. Two, our old product that maybe we're following up, we can't just let that product limp to the next product, because that's what Nintendo has traditionally done. They've let their systems die in the last 2 years. Even though I know we did technically have Skyward Sword in the last 2 years of Wii, it came after Wii U was already announced. So what do you learn from that? One, don't talk about your next platform until it's about to come out. Number one, announce it in summer, bring it out holiday.
Yeah,
done.
shorter reveal windows.
Done.
Yeah.
What did they do with Switch? Announced in October, released in March. Now, they did tell us they were going to announce it in October because they denied they were canceling Wii. By the way, for people who think Nintendo doesn't lie, they literally, at corporate investor meetings, denied that they were going to discontinue the Wii U, and then they discontinued it a month later. So, just like Nintendo's going to, they've learned, hold back on console announcements until we're basically ready to release it. Even if rumors are out there, maybe they'll address it and mention we're always working on something, but they're not going to officially announce something until they're ready. Look at Switch OLED. Announced, out in a few months. Switch Lite, announced, out in a couple of months. This, I think, is going to be Nintendo's pattern moving forward, even with a next-generation device. They're not going to do an Xbox Series X
By the way,
unveiling at the Game Awards and then wait a year. You know,
I'm curious what you think, because I don't think we've had a chance to talk about the patent issue and the Bloomberg report and how it all seems conflicting versus what Nintendo said. I don't think Nintendo straight up lied. I think that maybe plans changed, and I think what's going down is that maybe there is evidence of some R&D for 4K gaming, but I think that's for Switch 2 at this point.
have you watched?
And I think we see that by holiday 2023.
Have you watched Hogue Law's video on this?
Whose?
Hogue Law.
Nope.
Okay, go watch that video on Nintendo's statements on this, and you might come away shockingly surprised at what Nintendo is actually doing, because they're denying something without denying something, and they're doing it in a way that they can get away with it with their investors, and they're doing it in a way that they've consistently been doing it for decades, and every single time it's been technically what most of us would say is a lie, but legally it's not, because of the way they word things. It's very interesting. And he's an actual lawyer that, you know, not saying he knows everything about Japanese law and all that. Of course he doesn't. He doesn't claim that. But he's just saying from a legal perspective, he could see how Nintendo does all this stuff. And he brings up a whole bunch of references. It's a good video to go watch. My thing with this is, I don't know, by the way, if Switch Pro is a real thing or not. And I don't have any sources. I don't have any information on any of that. I do know that this dock seems like it's future-proof for a system that isn't currently here yet. Could have been canceled plans. Could also be making sure this is compatible with Switch 2, because maybe the original dock won't be. I have no idea. But all I know is
I just don't see them coming out with another system next year that's more expensive. I don't see that happening.
So
I think they have to wait 2 years.
So I hear you on this front. This is obviously into a different conversation on when we think a next system can come. I'll say this. New Nintendo 3DS came a year later and was more expensive. 2, having owned this system for a week, this just replaces the current Switch. they're going to discontinue the current Switch, guys. That version 2 red box Switch, it's going to be gone in 6 months. They're not even going to have it on store shelves. They're going to be done with it. This is going to be your only dockable Switch option by summer next year. And because of that, I do think this thing will actually get a price drop right around the time they're ready to announce a more expensive, more powerful platform. And this will take the place of the Switch that gets discontinued at $299. Now, then you say, why do they charge you more now? Why don't they just discontinue it now? Well, one, they still have a lot of the old systems in the supply chain that they need to sell. And two, it's just more of the thing is selling out, so we're not going to lower pricing now. That doesn't make sense. So we're going to keep selling that one for this holiday season and then have this one come out. We're just going to charge you more for it. It's kind of a scummy thing, but also Nintendo has a businessman in control. Mm-hmm. Going back to that, he's going to make the best business decision. Mm-hmm. The best business decision is not to discontinue anything at the moment, charge more for this, knowing that you're probably going to sell every single one of these you make anyways this holiday. Worry about the price drop next summer when people start to realize maybe we shouldn't spend $350 on this. You're right, you shouldn't. You should be spending $299, and it's profitable for us next summer. Bye-bye, old system. Here's the new system, setting you up for a reveal for another one. I'm not saying, by the way, that another one's going to get revealed next year. I could just see the roadmap, because this is the exact roadmap they did with the Nintendo 3DS. They charged you more for the 3DS XL, then they discontinued the original 3DS. Had the 3DS XL price drop, then they announced the new Nintendo 3DS at a more expensive price point, and they did this all within the span of a year. Nintendo has literally already done this. So there's no saying they won't do it again. Difference, that was Iwata, this is Furukawa. So we have no idea if they're going to follow that same. But that's the last time they had a handheld device. That's what they did. This is basically the XL. And people forget sometimes with the rumors of Switch Pro. Throughout all that time, and I'm sure you remember this, because it didn't get enough attention. Throughout all of these rumors over the last 8 months, let's say, it's been like a year, but whatever, a couple of years. There's also been another rumor floating along with it that Nintendo was working on 2 new Switches, and that one of them was just going to be a bigger screen. And that mostly got brushed under the table, because most of the rumors were about 4K and DLSS, and here's the one with a bigger screen. And they weren't going to release 2 new systems at once, so it would make sense to release one to replace the current before you release the upgraded one. Maybe. The only reason I say that is because if they release an upgraded one that uses the exact same chassis, the thing is, if it uses the same chassis, they print something different on the back, Nintendo Switch Pro or whatever, but if they use the same chassis, that would make sense, because then they can lower costs of manufacturing, because they don't have to make 2 different chassis like they're currently doing. They're currently making the old chassis and the new chassis. Get rid of the old chassis, make the Pro use the current chassis of the Lite, or the dang XL, the OLED, and move on. I don't know. It's just a theory, by the way. This is just based on Nintendo's history. We don't actually know anything. I have no sources on this. Just like I don't know what Nintendo's next-gen system could be. I've talked about this before. This is Nintendo. I'm not going to be shocked if their next system is a Roku stick you plug into the side of your TV and you're game streaming for now. I have no idea what Nintendo's doing. At all. It's all guesses.
If their next system is a Roku stick, a Roku-like stick device with a controller, and that's it, I'm telling you right now, put it on record, I will jump off a bridge. This bridge probably will be like only 4 feet high, but I will jump off that bridge. I promise you, I will find a bridge and I will jump off of it if this happens.
You can come and visit us. We got a bridge right next to us that's about 15 feet, but you go into about 40 feet of water, so you're good. I've jumped off it plenty of times.
All right. So
you can even make it more risky if you want. Yeah. There is a dam down in the park that if you jump in, there's only one spot. If you jump in, you'll be fine. Yeah. Just make sure you jump to that spot. Yeah. I've done it. I have completed the jump multiple times.
I would want to play this Roku-like Nintendo device just for the record. I will still play it. I will still buy it. But I will jump off a bridge
first
of some kind.
And then he's gonna get back up, and he's still gonna be a shilling by it anyway. See, he's gonna be. I don't want this thing, but I'm still gonna buy this.
No. I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna want it, but I'm just gonna be shocked. Yeah, that's all.
It would be pretty shocking. I'm just throwing out there that I don't get surprised as easily by anything Nintendo does at this point.
Yeah,
hybrid system. It was rumored 3 years before Nintendo announced it. bottom line is we don't know what's coming next. All I can do is look at rumors, look at the history of rumors, look at when there's smoke, there's fire, and there usually eventually becomes a product. Switch Pro,
man,
4K,
it's so
DLSS.
tough.
That's probably
The
going to be a product
games
someday.
lineup next year. It's
Yeah, and that's what I mentioned.
I
The thing Nintendo's doing. One,
I
they're not
just-
letting the
I
system
can't.
limp to the end. That's a huge thing. Like, keep
Right.
releasing big games. Because guess what? This is what Sony does. Sony has a weird thing where the end of their generation is so much stronger than the beginning. And Nintendo is trying to be like, we want to be strong start to end. And nobody's really actually ever done that. It's always been strong at the beginning or strong at the end. Sometimes you're strong in the middle and you suck at the beginning, you suck at the end. There's never been from start to finish are we strong. By the way, that doesn't mean there's not down years for Switch. Of course there is.
Mhm.
But every other year, Switch is baller. And they're about to do it again.
Mhm.
And technically, you could argue this year, the end of this year, has been
send me
pretty
a
nice.
link
It's
to
been a pretty
that
nice end of the
video.
year.
I gotta see it. I think Nintendo is going to release another system in 2023.
2023. That's
I
where you're
mean,
putting your marbles. Whatever
for
the
now.
system is. And
Like
which, by the way,
game,
Switch Lite and version 2, 2019.
right?
Switch OLED now. Next
2021,
gen or some other Switch, 2023.
2017,
it.
2019,
I
2021.
can also see a world where this was meant to be a 2020 system. And hello, pandemic, how you doing? We can't even keep the current Switch in stock, so why are we releasing a new one?
Sure, but you could also argue that it's right now it's hard to meet demand because of the semiconductor issue and chip shortages, right? Like, so to get this system, the OLED, to meet demand, and then to come out with another one just a year later, and for it to be more expensive, when that's not the pattern they've been following, at least with Switch, I'm hesitant to believe that they're going to do that at this point, this late into the game. The implication being that this Switch Pro is a mid-gen refresh, right?
Well,
If
I
you
have
do
a different.
it's not even just that, right? If
Yes.
the mid-gen refresh comes out holiday 2022, that's 5.5 years into the system's life cycle. How much more do we wait before Nintendo puts out the next system? Do they just wait a paltry 2 years?
Or,
I feel like they would have to. Okay, go
as
on.
I've thrown out before, it's called iterative for a reason. They never have a next gen system. It's just a new, more powerful one every 4 or 5 years with a light version or something in between, and you call it good. And it's just like the dang phones. Yeah, it's iPhone 13. Call it an iPhone 12s like they used to do. It doesn't really matter. It's the same.
Right, the
design.
original iPhone doesn't work anymore. Right, like
Well, yeah, of
eventually
course
you
the
phase
original
out
one
the
doesn't.
older.
But they phase
You
it
phase
out.
out
As an example,
models every
iOS,
few years.
what is it? iOS 15 that recently came out like a month ago. It's compatible all the way back to the iPhone 6s. That's quite a ways back that they're still showing support. My point with the iterative system thing is that it is like phones, just not every year. It's the OG Switch and Switch Lite will be phased out as the new one comes in.
The Switch
That's
2,
more
the
powerful.
Switch
Now, this
3,
has the
the
same
Switch-
specs, you
yeah.
might say, so they might not phase them out right away, of course. They might not be manufacturing them anymore, but the games they make for the new Switch will still work on the OLED and still work on that. But then whatever the next more powerful one is past the Pro or Switch 2 or whatever they call it is, new Nintendo Switch, that's when this device and all the original Switches are phased out. Instead of it calling generations, they just go, no, this is just the next Switch. This is the next system. Just like iPhone 13 is the future of iPhone.
Yeah.
It became a brand unto
when do you-
itself.
when do you think
Galaxy,
that happens,
the future of
though?
Galaxy, the future of this, the future of that. So, like, you're not really replacing, you're just slowly phasing things out as you release new devices every 2 to 3
Sure.
years.
But the thing that kind of gets me, and I love that idea. I want that.
I
idea.
love
We've
it too.
talked about
I've
it
been
before.
saying this since
Yeah,
2017.
we've you and I have talked about on this channel at least once, maybe twice already. But and I've talked about it as well a few times. I love the idea, but the Switch OLED basically has the same specs as the original Switch.
Yes. That's kind of the one thing that's like,
And so
okay,
that there's
they
a
gotta keep it around even
4.5 year gap for that, right? So imagine so when do they phase it out? Because let's say they wait until 2025, that means a Switch OLED will have only been viable for 4 years.
So
I don't know. But
but here's the thing. what did we just say? Switch OLED is just a refresh of the current Switch. It's not new. It's just a refresh.
Mm-hmm.
So when you consider what it is, who cares? The overall platform of Switch, that Tegra X1, will have been the lead platform for what, 2025? That puts it at 27, 8 years. And by the way, 8 years is not insane, guys. They said this was going to be the longest generation they've ever had. 8 years would be it.
I mean, if you
They went
if
7
you
with
think
Wii
that at
DS.
2025 they stopped making games for Switches between 2017 and 2021, you could just look at it as that's when the next generation starts, and you just bought your system late. Like,
Well, yeah.
there
I
you
mean,
go.
there's
Yeah.
obviously when they actually cut support, like 3DS kept going for a bit. There's when they actually cut support and stopped manufacturing versus when the
I mean,
new system
I
launches.
think regardless, the base Switch will still be playing new games until 2025.
Yeah, and if I think that's the case,
basically exactly like the 3DS.
yes. And I think if that's the case, why is it inconceivable that there's some sort of pro device that comes between now and then that continues to play games after 2025 for another more powerful platform that comes out, say, in 2025? Like, I don't know whether there's a world where... Now, again, this, by the way, is me asking Nintendo to do something they've never done, and I have no indication that's what they're going to do. Again, even if they released a new Nintendo Switch, say, next year, that is the same generation, but a little bit more powerful. Even if, by the way, it could literally be the Tegra X1, but actually unlock the full potential of it, which the current Switch does not do, by the way. That alone would be considered a new Nintendo Switch, just because you finally get the full performance of the actual... I don't know if you guys realize that. Like, that's one thing I wish they would have did with this. Improve the cooling to a point that you could just run the base clocks. That would be fantastic. But they didn't do that. That would have been a cheap and super easy thing for Nintendo to do, and they didn't go that route. Then I don't know why they didn't. Only Nintendo knows, because only Nintendo knows their future roadmap. I think what's interesting when you brought the patents up before is obviously the one patent, in particular, the one that's dealing with an upscaling system, an AI upscaling system that can do 4K, kind of goes against, obviously, Nintendo saying these don't exist. We don't have these things out there. Which, obviously, as all of you guys should know by now, Nintendo has a billion patents.
I was going to say, here's the other thing, too, is could they just be putting this patent out there so nobody else can get it?
The patents automatically go public after 18 months after filing. They don't have a choice.
You know what's an interesting thing?
But
maybe
so
the
it went
reason
public,
why
Nintendo couldn't stop it from going public.
Right. But what I'm saying
Here's
is they put this patent in place that for a Switch-like thing with the upscaling, so that nobody else could come behind them or in front of them and put in a patent for a Switch-like thing with upscaling, and then they're stuck redesigning something.
The upscaling's on the it's a software-based hardware and upscaler based on their thing. It's basically DLSS. They could just use DLSS or FSR. Those are both public.
But one made for mobile hardware, right? Like I think with the way DLS is right now, it's not necessarily meant for.
It's not really
like
about whether it's mobile hardware. It's about what generation of chip you're using from.
Well, just basically something more customized for Switch. It's the real point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always said, by the way, if Switch got DLSS at some point, it wouldn't be like the bog standard on a 3090. It's
something
going to
customized,
be a custom version that NVIDIA probably helps them with, but.
Yeah, I mean they're making their hardware, so they kind of have to.
I assume that they keep making the hardware and that they don't switch. I hope that they don't, but you never know.
There's something I want to bring up.
64 Ocarina of Time with Switch. We're not gonna be talking about that today. We literally talked about that last podcast, so that's not gonna be a topic for today. We're actually wrapping up this podcast here in 9 minutes.
Yeah, so a couple things I want to bring up. One, it's possible that this Switch Pro or upscaling Switch, we keep saying 4K.
Wow.
What if the reason Nintendo isn't lying is because everyone who's made these reports has assumed 4K? What if it's just not 4K? They're using this technology, it will improve performance, it will improve visual fidelity, but it's not to 4K. Maybe it's just 1440p. And it just maybe they do it from a pretty low resolution, so Switch games perform really well. They target low resolution, so they have high frame rate, and just go to 1440p. And all of a sudden, all those 4K dev kits, they're not real because they were never meant for 4K. They were meant for something else.
Yeah. By the way, it's interesting because when you look at Bloomberg's original report, they very clearly in the report say it has a 4K output. They didn't say the systems giving this that the dev systems are giving you 4K native resolution to play on your TV. They're saying the literal video out they can put into a TV outputs at a 4K signal on these new dev units. By the way, this Switch dock has all the hardware it needs on the inside right now to give you a 4K 60 FPS output to your TV. Funnily enough, Nintendo's not going to talk about that, and it's software locked at the moment, but this dock can be updated, and it could unlock it. I've already proven, when I tore it apart, that all the hardware is already there. Now, there's multiple reasons it could be there. It could just be there because of cost reasons or some contract they have. There's a lot of reasons that it might be in there, but the bottom line is it has the physical capabilities to do that. Technically, the original dock could as well, but it could only go out to 30 FPS, which is why you wouldn't use that anyways, because you don't want to be capped like that. You want to hit at least 60. But the thing is, Nintendo technically already has a 4K output right here. It's just not enabled. So it's like hard for me to believe that there's dev units that literally will read on a TV screen or a monitor as 4K. No. But Nintendo's wording was very interesting on it because they worded it as in a device outputting 4K visuals, which isn't what Bloomberg said. But it's a way for Nintendo to deny without denying, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Nintendo's very careful about it.
There's something else I want to address. Alex Arias, I hope I pronounced your name right, said this. The 3DS had 6 different models in a 6-year span. If y'all really think they can launch in 2011, XL in 2012, 2DS in 2013, new 3DS in 2014, but can't do OLED now in 21, then Pro next year, y'all on some. So I'm telling you, I've never said it can't happen, just to be clear.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
What I'm saying, though, is that I'm skeptical because if you look at the way they're handling the Switch, not the 3DS, but the Switch, it's been different. Switch came out early 2017. They waited 2.5 years for Switch Lite. And then 2 more years, 2 years and an additional month, they come out with Switch OLED, which increased in price. And also, they came out with the base model, then they went down in price, then it went up in price. This idea of a 4K Switch would go up in price likely more than just $50. To do that a year later, which would then be the shortest window of all the revisions and be the most expensive one, that has me skeptical, especially when you consider that right now it's tough to meet demand because of the semiconductor issue with the Switch OLED and the chips and all, to then come out with another one just a year later that's more expensive that goes against the rest of the pattern of the Switch era. That's why I'm skeptical. I understand Nintendo's history with the 3DS. It's not the same situation. But it's also possible.
You can also argue, and this is the support their argument. You guys know I'm already on this side of the fence anyways. I think it is possible it can come next year. I look at it as Switch is also a very different type of lifespan. One, how do we know this wouldn't have been a year after Switch Lite? We don't know. There was a pandemic literally months after Switch Lite came out.
Sure.
There was a pandemic.
Well,
so
there is one key difference.
We don't actually know if this might have been a year after Lite. We don't know.
The thing is,
Lite's the one that's interesting because it started later, right? Light. Your point on Lite coming like 2.5 years later is entirely valid, right? Because we got March of 2017 to the September area of 2019.
The thing is, Shunta Furukawa said at the beginning of 2020 at an investors meeting they had no plans for a revision. In 2021, he did not say they had no plans. So that's the one key difference there that implies that there never was a plan for a revision in 2020.
Go watch Hoglaw's video. He actually said something in February of this year that there wasn't going to be any revisions.
Check it out.
So, but again, that's he just makes really good videos in general. I will spread Hoglaw for life, not just for this other topics.
The other thing is maybe in 2019 they had a plan for the upgrade, and then the pandemic hit.
Here's my
the back
thing,
end of it, and then so 2020 they never had a plan.
What people forget about the 3DS is the 3DS flopped at launch. No one wants to bring this up. The 3DS failed.
They needed to rush out.
They had to rush a revision out that made more sense. So its first revision came super quick because they had to. Switch took off like a rocket. I firmly believe they were all ready to launch a Switch Lite in 2018 if they had to. But they didn't because Switch was still having such high sales. They just rode that sale train and said, that's all right, let's wait till 2019 and then we can start our revision train. But then a pandemic hit, chip shortage. And by the way, chip shortage is still going to be a thing next year. It won't be as prevalent as it's been the last two, but it still will be a thing. 2023 is when things really let up because there's new factories opening in 2023. So things will be a bit better then. By the way, right now there's multiple bottlenecks in the chip shortage. It's not just one thing at the moment. It's because certain parts that it used to just be semiconductors. Now there's other parts that are having issues because the pandemic's starting to really rage hard in places like even Taiwan at the moment, which used to be kind of the bastion where, oh, Nintendo can still make their products there. Don't worry about it. Well, now they're getting hit really, really hard. So they're having issues keeping up. But once this all, I don't know if the pandemic will pass. I think it's just going to become something people just get tired of and go on and live their lives eventually. I would like to think that that's not. I would like to think that everyone will do what's in the best interest of themselves, I guess. But I just want to look at this as, could they launch it next year? I mean, they already launched a new device, technically still in the middle of a pandemic that hasn't been called off yet. Yes, it's still using the same underlying chip, but since they already have this going and they just got to switch the chip manufacturing, and the chip manufacturing, by the way, that NVIDIA is already doing on chips that are significantly better than the Tegra X1, they can make more of those chips per line of manufacturing. It's conceivably arguable that the Tegra X1 chip that Nintendo is now the only company still using, not even NVIDIA uses it anymore, that them continuing to make it is actually a less efficient use of the current production lines, which is why we've seen Tegra X1, all the other variations besides the one in Switch, go out of production. NVIDIA publicly announced that we're done making these certain models of Tegra X1. I think they'd like to be done making this one as well, but if Nintendo's going to keep ordering millions of them, they're not going to say no. They're going to keep going. They have a contract. They have to honor the contract.
Well, not just that, but that'd be really stupid to just turn down that.
Well,
many.
that and right now Nintendo's the only avenue NVIDIA has at the moment into console gaming,
right?
And they're going to want to keep that partnership
exactly.
going.
Oh, yeah. I want to go back to the 3DS thing,
Sure.
just because I remember analyzing this a few months ago.
Yeah.
And I kind of forgot. Like you could talk about like the different DS lines that came out and be like, oh, they came out almost every year, but let me just kind of go over the dates, okay? So new 3DS, it came out in Japan first, early 2011, and a month later came out in the other regions. Okay, so let's just look at North America just so for some consistency, right? The original 3DS came out March 27, 2011, and then in America then I keep saying new, but the Nintendo 3DS XL, so the next iteration, came out August 2012, so almost a year and a half later. Over a year is the point I'm making with that. And then the 2DS, which that launched, I'm here on the site. The 2DS launched in what, 2013? Yeah.
I don't have that.
No, it was announced August 2013, and its release date just a few months later. It came out late 2013. So you have the 3DS XL, which was like mid 2012, right? Almost a year and a half after the initial launch, and the 2DS was also over a year and some months, right? So we're not talking about a year. We're talking about a year, closer to a year and a half for these windows of release dates. Then when we look at the new 3DS, the initial American launch, it gets messy because there's a new 3DS and the new 3DS XL. So if we just talk about the very earliest launch for the 3DS in Japan was late 2014, but for America it was early 2015. Point is, we're looking at if we're averaging, because all the regions sort of vary here. It was usually not just a year; it was usually a year and some months, closer to a year and a half, for all these iterations. So it wasn't like every year they did it like at November. It was a little bit more than that.
Sure. Well, I think when people say every year, they just mean calendar year, 2020, 2021, 2022. There's a new device in each of those calendar years. Even if it's not a calendar year from the last time the device came out, it's more than 12 months. They still look at it as, well, a new device came out in 2011. A new device came out in 2012.
Sure.
A new device came out in 2013.
Right.
So I understand the way you're phrasing
point
it, but a
I'm
lot of that
making is
also has to
that
do with, well, part of it has to do with when they released the original 3DS. Obviously, that was at the time, that was a very odd release timing for Nintendo. Now,
yeah,
lo and behold, yay, you can release devices whenever, just like a Switch. It doesn't really matter. You just, have to release it with the right games that'll sell, like a Breath of the Wild. Who knew? Games sell systems. I
sure.
still remember when, like, Switch was sold out at launch, and more copies of Breath of the Wild had sold for the system.
Right.
It was very obvious Breath of the Wild was pushing Switch units like a mofo at the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
The point I'm trying to make though with the 3DS release dates is that even though during the 3DS era, it suggests that maybe Nintendo would release hardware almost every calendar year. If you look at the actual release dates, on average, they were closer to a year and a half gaps as opposed to a year. So then when you look at the Switch era, which is a different era, we're looking at 2 to 2.5 years. But the implication of some of these rumors is that we're going to get a more expensive model, which goes against the pattern in a year, which is still shorter than the 3DS era that had hardware almost every calendar year. You get my point? It's just that even the history doesn't suggest that we're going to get a more powerful model just a year later.
But
that doesn't mean it won't. It's just
I
going
would say
against the
this.
pattern.
This also depends on what the hell is a Switch OLED. What is this?
The closest approximation is a Switch XL. I mean, a 3DS
that's
XL.
the closest thing you can say is an XL, right?
Yeah.
Closest thing. I mean, it's not new hardware.
I mean, you could argue maybe new 3DS. Like there's not additional horsepower though, so that's
new 3DS had like more RAM and more horsepower. That's not this.
3DS XL is probably the best approximation.
Yeah, like an XL model is probably the best approximation. I agree with that. Because the reason I bring that up is because there hasn't been a hardware refresh since the Switch Lite when they went to a shrunk down X1. That was the last time there was a literal hardware change on the internals.
Yeah.
Think about that. That was 2019. Why the hell can't we have a new chip in 2021? If you just look at this as all they did was reform it up, why can't there be a new chip 3 years later? Why can't there be more RAM 3 years later? Like, that's already a pretty big gap. If you just look at this as all they did was release the chassis with the current hardware that can easily be swapped out once they have enough of the other chips. Like, it's all about what do we consider this? Do we consider this something set up for the future, or is this just a one-off refresh of the current system and this is it? Or is this something that's trying to set itself up for future? And that's why I mentioned, like, oh yeah, the fact that this can do 4K 60 FPS, this system can't like do that. Well, I mean, technically it can output at 4K.
But the dock itself apparently
feels future-proofed. This design feels like, well, why would they only have this design around for 2 years? This is the best screen, the best built handheld to date. Why would they only have that around for 2 years? This feels like a design that can infinitely be used. It just needs better internals.
I'll tell you that
obviously
lineup
this
for
is
next
hypothetical.
year.
It depends on what Nintendo's doing. I'm hoping that Nintendo's smart enough to realize, why do a total hardware redesign? Because here's the thing. There's the same chip in here, the same RAM, but they fundamentally changed how everything else in here works. It's completely laid out different. The memory card reader and the game card reader, micro SD card reader, and the 64 gigs of memory are all now on the same board in here. They're not 3 separate boards. Everything is just more compact, more tightly put together, and you can argue that all fits in with a hardware refresh, and you're completely right. You think about things like PlayStation 4 Slim or something, right? You think about hardware refreshes where there are redesigns on the components on the inside, and that's all they are. And I agree, but why put in all this effort to release this amazing hinge, this amazing looking screen, if you're just going to release a brand new next-gen hardware in 2023? What the hell is the point? Unless what you built here is still going to be used with new hardware in the future. Ergo, all you're really waiting for is enough of those components to be banked up to actually do a release. Because, after all, I will say this about the Bloomberg report, and by the way, it's not just Bloomberg now. There's like 4 different websites that have now said they know someone with a 4K dev kit. I can't imagine a world that exists where all these different journalists have their own independent sources at these game companies saying that they have seen and or used and or are currently developing something for a dev kit that has nothing to do with what OLED does. And imagine a world where that hardware never comes out when dev kits are in the hands of developers. Now, this is a different world because of the pandemic, and it could have been an original plan that got canceled. But I can't imagine Nintendo would put that hardware in developers' hands. And again, you could argue Bloomberg and everyone's lying. Fine. Make that argument all you want. You can look at the track record of the people reporting on this and realize how great their track record really is. And I know people are going to look at Takahashi and be like, but he was so wrong. Yeah, he confuddled his information together. Absolutely. But was he not right about a 7-inch panel? That's OLED. Was he not right about the kickstand? Was he not right that this panel was going to be made by Samsung, which I took it apart just yesterday and proved it was made by Samsung. He was right on literally everything other than 4K DLSS, which obviously was conflated with the fact that there was multiple systems potentially in development, and he obviously knew people that had dev kits that he just said, well, if you have dev kits, obviously this is the device that's coming. Or you have dev kits. Why the hell would you have dev kits if this isn't the device coming? So he just kind of put 2 and 2 together and said, duh. And, well, duh didn't happen. This happened. So I can't imagine a world where if we try to look objectively and realize why would all these developers be lying about having these dev kits? And then imagine a world where Nintendo tells these developers, you know what? That's a cool dev kit. Never mind. Forget about it. Here's a new one for a brand new system. We're not those dev kits you've been making games
I'll
for
say,
that we told you to make games for.
I think maybe they're not actually supposed to be 4K games.
Well, no, yeah. The whole by the way, the whole 4K thing's even confuddled by. No one thinks there's a new handheld coming from Nintendo, whether it's next gen or Pro, that's putting out native 4K games. It ain't happening, folks. That's why there's been all the talk about DLSS. Well, it's all going to be like 1080p upscale, 1440p upscale, or
maybe they'll be designed so they look good on 4K televisions. Yeah. But they'll be the games are being designed to look good on 4K televisions, but not actual 4K resolutions. Maybe even the upscaling technology isn't 4K. Maybe it's just 1440p.
It could be 1440p too, yeah. But the idea is obviously when people bring up 4K, and Takahashi Machizuki's been very clear about this. He wasn't trying to argue the Switch itself is putting out 4K gaming. Guys, I hate to break it to you, the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X don't have the guts to do true 4K gaming. I'm sorry. I don't mean to hurt people's feelings. They don't. They're not even close. A 3090, a $1,500 GPU that wipes its ass crack with PlayStation 5s is barely enough to do true 4K gaming. I just want to throw that out there, and you guys think these $500 consoles can really do it. No, they're going to rely on upscaling. They're going to be using AI upscalers. They're going to be taking massive use of FSR, AMD's open source upscaler. They're going to be taking advantage of that. They're going to keep doing checkerboard rendering. They're going to keep doing all these tricks to give you a really crisp looking picture at 4K, but it's not actually 4K. And that's what people are saying with Switch. No, it won't be able to output the next Switch or the Switch Pro or whatever. It won't be able to output the same visual fidelity of these more powerful, more expensive platforms. But that doesn't mean it can't give you a crisp looking 4K image. It could take something like, say, Mario Odyssey and make it not look blurry on your 65-inch TV by just using AI upscaling. Which, by the way, your TVs technically already... People always wonder about upscaling. Your TVs already have upscalers in them. They're just really crappy. I don't know if people realize TV upscalers are just shit. They're the worst. But they technically exist. But anyways, I think that's going to do it. One thing... Andres, are you going to be getting a Switch OLED coming up this Friday?
No.
No.
Not
Do
that I don't want one.
Interest? Do you have any interest?
Not that I don't want what?
Do you have any interest in getting one in the future?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, by the way, expensive, guys. It's going to cost almost $400 after taxes to buy one.
This is more of a finances timing thing.
Yeah. So it's almost $400.
Yeah. But I absolutely want one. There is a strong, strong desire.
And I'd say, hey, I'd send you this one, but you're just going to use it in dock mode, so. Because it works in dock mode.
The dock and the Joy-Cons are pretty.
I mean, the dock and the Joy-Cons are nice. I will say. So everyone's like, you broke it. You should keep it for yourself. By the way, guys, I'm pretty positive at this point. Well, I'll be just giving this thing away on Friday. There was a number of people that said we want it, even though it's broken. They want to try to fix it. They want to have replacement parts. They just want the damn Joy-Cons in the dock because the Joy-Cons in the dock are utterly phenomenal. But yeah, we're probably going to give this away on Friday is probably what's going to happen. But setting that aside, it's just one of those. I think this is also partially like what you were saying earlier, like, you destroyed this thing that I really want. It's expensive. It is expensive, and I paid a lot more money than what most people would pay for it. I'm aware. And I got to make a lot of unique
just
videos.
For the record, I'm not judging you for it.
No. Nobody. There's not been a
just-
single person who said you're an idiot for spending money. No, because
You're
look
an
at all the
idiot.
videos.
Yeah.
But look at all the videos I got to make
Yeah.
because of it. Like
Yeah,
that
no,
wouldn't
sure.
have happened without it. So same thing, by the way. If I got early access to anything that I wasn't subject to NDA on.
Is the screen cracked already?
Oh yeah, it's cracked. I took the
Yeah.
screen off.
Yeah.
I detached it.
Yeah. I mean, I saw you take it out. I just wasn't aware of.
In my latest video, there's a shot towards the end where I go like this and show the cracks. There's a lot of cracks.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, folks, people acted like I didn't know about the suction cup method. I could have avoided breaking it. I'm well aware of the suction cup method. I tried using a suction cup to take this off. I've taken off phone screens before. That's how you do tempered glass. You don't pry it out. You use a suction cup. Here's the
Have you
problem.
thought
I don't have
about-
a heat gun. I had a hair dryer, and it
Mm.
couldn't get the glue hot enough to let go with the suction cup, and that's why I had to pry. So once I realized I couldn't get it off with the suction cup, it was either wait for a heat gun that I don't have, and then the video wouldn't have came out, or just accept it. Just accept defeat. Accept you're breaking it to find out everything you need to know about the panel. Just accept it, Nate. And by the way, it was an easy decision to make knowing that I have one coming on Friday. If I didn't have one coming, that would be... I don't know if I would have made the same decision. But
Have you thought about like just doing like scratch tests and stuff?
I mean, I
On the
guess I
screen?
could at this point.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't have a scratch.
That's why I asked
kit
you about
right
the
now.
crack. I was just trying to open up that like conversation, like
Yeah, I should.
because I'm curious about people just doing stress tests on the Switch.
I mean
OLED.
that this is probably, not perfect for all stress tests, but I guess I could do a scratch test on it now since the screen doesn't matter anymore. That might be
Right,
interesting.
I mean,
do a scratch
don't break
test.
your- don't break your
one of
Switch you're
those
getting
kits
on Friday.
Amazon is only like $10. I mean, I know jerry rig everything, and other people will do it as well. But who says other people can't? Because I don't think
How
anyone's done a
expensive would it be to
a scratch
get
test.
the?
I could also do.
Can you order the exact same OLED display?
Yeah.
And
You
put
can.
it in
Well,
there.
no,
The exact
so I've
same
been
one is
looking
that
into
available?
it. You can't order it yet, but there are places that are saying we will have stock on this in like a month. All Chinese places, whether or not they're good, I have no idea. But by the way, it's possible, folks, that everything else in here is fine. You could replace the screen in the future, and it could be a perfectly working OLED. But again, that's neither here nor there. The person who was going to get this system no longer wants it, obviously, because it's broken, and they know it's going to be expensive to repair. And I have my own coming, so you know what? Well, we're probably just going to do another. Can I call it a Switch OLED giveaway? It is a Switch OLED without the OLED working. There technically is still an OLED panel.
Switch no LED.
That's a no LED.
Call it the Switch OLED giveaway.
Switch
The
no
Switch
LED.
OLED giveaway.
Yes.
So probably gonna give this away on Friday. At least you can get a cool dock and Joy-Cons out of it. And someone wanted to know earlier about the Joy-Cons. I didn't talk about it in my recent video. The Joy-Cons are exactly the same. There's nothing different about them compared to the other Joy-Cons. They use the same joysticks. So people asking about drift, I haven't experienced it yet, but it doesn't matter. They're the same. They're gonna drift eventually. That's just what's gonna happen. Nintendo did not update the design of these. I would have liked to see them because they updated everything else. So why not the Joy-Cons? And I've talked about this before. Well, when you got a billion lawsuits going on, you don't want to add more ammo to the fire by saying those lawsuits are correct by fixing a product that you're saying isn't broken in the first place. So they fixed all the other things though. They don't have any lawsuits going on. There was no lawsuits over the kickstand. There was no lawsuits over the screen. There was no lawsuits over the rails and the wobbliness of the controller. They fixed all the things that people aren't suing them over. So I mean, should I say if you want a better Joy-Cons, we shouldn't have lawsuits? No, because you got to hold companies accountable. But still, very fascinating. I do think without the lawsuits, Nintendo might have fixed them by now. Just a theory, because they're handing out free repairs in the U.S. still to this day on it. So it's like, they would rather not do free repairs. They'd probably rather just have one they don't have to repair for free. But again, they have a lot of millions and millions of dollars in lawsuits going on with governments even that they have to try to deny there's things wrong. So it's funny because they initially were saying that, almost admitted that it was a thing that was wrong without outright saying it. One of those Nintendo denying, but then not denying, and confirming without confirming. It's like Nintendo's wordplay. Anyways, if you guys want to go check out Andre's Restart, why don't you guys go ahead and do that? We have a link down to his YouTube channel down in the description if you guys want to check him out. He makes a lot of Nintendo-focused content like I do, except his is a lot more on the speculative and conversation side, not necessarily always reporting the latest news and all that. He'll get into stuff once in a while, some rumors here and there, but like a lot, if you go watch a lot of his videos, a lot of it's really great discussion-oriented videos that I highly enjoy. He brings up a lot of speculation, connects a lot of dots, brings a lot of facts into the equation. They're some of my favorite videos to watch. Honestly, I wish that you were getting the viewership I did, because I think your videos deserve the viewership more than mine do. So you guys should
thank you for that. It's high
go
praise.
check out his video. He's almost at 11,000 subscribers. That's, help him out there to subscribe.
We're inching there.
I'll say this: I always say this, if you enjoy the conversation that we just had right here on this channel with him, he has these conversations on his own channel with himself doing his own stuff, and then he has his own podcast as well on Sunday nights, which I've been on I think twice now. And probably will be on again at some point in the future. Just like Andre's Restart will be back on here at some point in the future.
Yeah.
So we're good friends.
I'll say this one little thing. We did a little bit of a Smash hype stream the day before the reveal for Sora, and I talked about the Sora rumor. Now, I'm not going to take credit for I predicted Sora. I did not predict Sora. I, along with many people, acknowledged it as a strong possibility, but not necessarily my number one. However, I did say this. I did note that it was interesting that Sakurai's Twitter has Sora in the name, and there's Team Sora, his team that he works on.
And of course, he brought that up in the thing too. And
he brought it up, the connection, when he revealed Sora. So I did talk about that the day before the reveal. So, sometimes little things like that come up.
If you want to dig deep into it, and we now know this, it's very apparent that Masahiro Sakurai was a massive Kingdom Hearts fan. He was not even trying to hide it. It was in plain sight, and that's why people didn't see it. It was hidden in plain sight.
Maybe that's why you saved it for the final reveal.
Fan. And the thing is, you can't even say that's speculation anymore. He said it himself. He's like, you might recognize Sora Ltd. It's like, by the way, I've played and beaten all these. Okay, he's literally been telling us
Kingdom Hearts fanboy.
Huge fanboy of Kingdom Hearts. So this, when it says Nintendo picked out all the characters, I gotta feel like this one character has been something he's been trying to make happen for multiple Smash Bros. Games.
No, I've also read online too, though, that because Sora was very high up on fan polls a couple of years ago too.
Yes.
He brought that up.
He's actually the winner of the Smash
He said it was the number one voted. So they did a poll back for the 3DS and Wii U version about most wanted characters, and they never revealed the results of that poll ever.
People assumed it was Bayonetta.
Yeah. People, they never it was weird because usually when you ask a public poll like that, you're eventually going to reveal the results, even if you didn't get the characters.
Well, they did. How many
just
years
for cool, just for fun fan conversation thing, You ask the public poll, unveil the results eventually, even if you don't release those characters. And he literally said, "Hey, the reason we didn't unveil the poll is because we really were trying to get this character in the game anyways, and it just took till now for us to do it. So now I can tell you, hey, this was the number one result on the poll. We didn't want to release the poll then because we weren't going to be able to add the character to those games, but it doesn't mean we weren't trying." And he basically tried to say, we've been really trying to get Sora into Smash for quite some time, and he made sure to say, hey, it took a lot of
that Smash ballot
to get
probably
through,
really structured Smash Ultimate. Yeah. I bet a lot of the characters that were high up on there were probably gave them really good perspective on who to add into Smash Ultimate.
Oh yeah, I think about some of even the initial Ridley. I guarantee Ridley was probably somewhere in the top 10 in that fan voting somewhere. Metroid fans probably came through hardcore and said Ridley.
Nintendo also probably told Sakurai, hey, get Ridley in here. Maybe same thing with King K. Rool. This is speculation, but because we've talked about how today. Maybe Nintendo has a big plan for both Metroid and Donkey Kong.
And I'm
Maybe
sure
they
on a
wanted
poll
those
like
characters
that,
in there for that
Banjo-Kazooie
reason.
was probably up there somewhere
Mhm.
too, just on the fan poll.
Mhm.
And so, like,
Pyra
again,
and
he didn't.
Mithra,
It would
Xenoblade
be
3.
interesting if Sakurai would have unveiled what the top 10 actually were, and then just see how many
Yeah.
of them have gotten in. That
Right.
would have been kind of cool.
Yeah.
It also could be, hey, maybe we don't unveil it because there's some other ones that haven't done yet that maybe they
Yeah.
want to add in future Smash games. So, like, let's
Or
not
maybe
unveil
it's
the
just
poll.
like they're not gonna happen. Like maybe like Goku and
Oh
Iron
yeah,
Man
or
are
like
there.
get your hopes up for things that aren't. Yeah, like
Yeah.
Goku's on
Shrek.
there. I'm sure Goku's probably number 2. Goku's always requested like crazy, and even though Sakurai has said all the reasons that a Goku can't be in Smash, everyone keeps hoping that those reasons are just not going to exist.
I'll tell
the
you
thing
this
is,
one
the
little
reason
thing.
for Goku not to be in Smash, technically, if you want to blame Sakurai for it, well, if he's no longer running Smash, technically, who
Yeah,
knows what the
yeah.
rules are then?
I'll say this one little thing to as like just a final little thought to consider. Yeah, that's what Sakurai said, but also Sakurai once said Ridley was too big. What he may think at one point can change. It's not that he's lying. It's not that he's backing up his opinions. It's just the times change and your opinions change. Your perspective on the design of a game changes, right? But then also, to your point, Sakurai may not have as heavy of a hand in the next game. But then also, the final reveal of Sora. That's already starting to bridge that gap between video game and non-video game characters.
I
The
knew
fact
you were
that
going
there was
there.
a
I knew I saw this
but-
coming at the very
but
beginning. of
it's
this little
it's
tiny-
logical. It's logical.
I know.
That's it's just
It's
it's
also,
the
by
truth.
the way, guys, logical that if you want to think about this being the last Smash game that Sakurai does, that the final character being added happens to be the name of his company.
It's poetic.
It's literally like the perfect ending. The ultimate best-selling fighting game of all time, the greatest video game crossover of all time, and he gets in his dream character that he named his company after.
It's also in
insane.
some way almost like Sakurai being in there because like it's a part of his his Twitter and stuff. Like people are joking about like Sakurai getting into Smash. Well, in a way, putting Sora in there is like him kind of getting into Smash. I also appreciate that Sora is he's not like a weird character. He's a very typical Smash kind of character in terms of the way he plays.
Yeah, and like people are always like, "Oh, but everyone's okay with this sword fighter," and then you watch as you're going through all the sword fight moves and all this, and all of a sudden you get into all the magic, and you're like, "Okay, yeah, that's a typical sword fighter." Huh? Do you see what this character is doing right now? That's not typical of the other sword fighters.
I actually feel like pretty much every character in Smash feels very unique.
Yeah, and this one feels very unique as well.
If you're complaining about a
it's
sword fighter,
crazy.
then you're
Isn't it
complaining about games.
Think about all the unique characters and how they play. Like you start even with like Steve from Minecraft, like how different that character plays compared to anything else in the game, and then that just keeps happening. It's like it went from every character having the same base up B, down B, side smash, all this stuff, projectile to nope. Now when we add characters, they have abilities that we've never seen in Smash ever before. And it's crazy, and it's good. And we somehow, miracle, balanced it. I don't know how we did it to make everything still viable if you're really good at the game. You can play any character, be really, really good, and pretty much beat any other character. I know there's
The
tiers.
DLC,
Of course there's tiers.
basically, the development of it had the development time of an entire game.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it took work.
All right, well, thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you guys enjoy this. Audio version will be up tomorrow. You guys are amazing. You can follow Andres Restart, as I said, down to his YouTube channel. Also, do you want to follow you on Twitter or anything? I forgot to put that down there today.
No, but I mean, Andres Restart, you'll see me on Twitter too. Just that's the same thing.
You can follow Eric here on Twitter at emo8790. You can follow me on Twitter at NintyPrime. I always suggest following my Twitter if you do enjoy my content because I actually notify people on Twitter when my content comes out. That doesn't always happen on YouTube. We have a really high percentage of people that hit the notification bell and a very low percentage of people that actually get notifications. It's really weird. So that's another way. We also have a Discord server as well, which I will pop that off in the chat right now quick because it's a really simple chat command.
We ended up doubling your expected time. By the way,
that's all right.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
What was funny is that like an hour in, I thought we were like almost done too.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Every time you're on, it never ends. At least we're not going another hour.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you guys have a lovely rest of your week. Do you have any upcoming content you want to tease before we get out of here?
I'm hoping to come out with a Smash related video tomorrow and perhaps a Metroid related video later this week. Stay
Nice.
tuned.
Nice. I'm hoping to have a final thoughts on Switch OLED video tomorrow. A little awkward since it's broken, but hopefully I have enough footage that I can splice together from other stuff to show it working, to show the things that I'm talking about. But I literally spent a week with it. I don't need to wait for one on Friday to do impressions. So we'll see what happens. So that's what I hope for tomorrow. Otherwise, we'll have a normal news video because I didn't get one out today. And we'll see you guys on Friday. I'll have a live stream on Friday night. Be giving this away and all this jazz while vaguely watching the Brewers hopefully win.
Well, they play in the afternoon, so.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. You don't got to tell me. I'm aware. I've been watching it like a hawk.
Yeah.
And you know what I hate about this?
Yeah.
I'm nervous and think they're going to lose in
Oh,
the
I know.
NLDS.
I know. I get you.
I don't.
I get you.
I would hate to see it happen.
Yeah.
The second greatest record Brewer team of all time. And
I get you.
I'm trying to temper my expectations. The Milwaukee Bucks are the NBA champions right now.
Yeah.
And I still can't believe those words are coming out of my
Right.
mouth.
I mean, I was wearing my
Yeah.
Gear shirt.
Like, they're the NBA champions, so I'm trying to believe it's possible for the Brewers to also get it done. Somehow, in the same year. Probably not going to happen, but I keep hoping.
Yeah.
At least get to the NLCS and then end up losing to the Dodgers again or something, because we just can't beat them. But all right, folks, have a lovely day, and we'll catch you, whenever the next content goes up. Bye.
Yeah.
I should really get some ending music before I click end.
Mhm.
Be like, here's the ending music
Yeah.
and a goodbye screen. Yeah, this is your end, guys. Enjoy.